like to welcome everybody out to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting tonight. We'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll lead it. If the audience would please rise and follow me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first order of business tonight will be the minutes, approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Has anybody had a chance to review those, and do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those will be entered into the record. Our first item of business is then construction standards, a public hearing on an update to our construction standards.
Yeah, so we're proposing to add this note number 6 on our standard drawing ST 503. Basically what it does is it gives the city engineer the ability to waive the park strip and sidewalk along our residential street cross section with the requirements that it's a multifamily building with rear loaded buildings, and also the park strip and sidewalk are in front of the building. So we would still have a park strip and a sidewalk, but they would just be located in front of the building and not in the rear along the street. The asphalt section would stay the same, and then the other requirement would be the driveways loading onto the street would have to be 20 feet or longer.
So I'm a little bit confused on that.
Any
So
questions?
these
We go next.
residents would have a rear loading garage, a rear loading, so the
Yes.
driveway's on the back.
Yes.
And then we're eliminating or proposing to have it be an option that it could be waived for the park strip to be on the front or around. Are you talking about in the back also?
Front door of the building.
Okay.
So this is one development that will come later today, but I think it's a good example of what we would look for.
We blow that up
with
a
this
little bit.
proposed. You might have to actually go to online on board docs, but.
That's okay. Probably everyone else isn't as blind as I am.
So it's multifamily here. You still have a sidewalk in front. There's landscaping in front of the homes that the front door faces. But in the back, they're all rear loaded. Asphalt width meets our residential cross section. And then the 20-foot driveways. So that's kind of scenario that we would use this
What about to your right there,
right here.
where you have that same, no, the one going up
Right
and
here.
down? Would that be eliminated there also? Because that kind of looks like a different situation to me along the front.
Yeah, it's
Different.
a little different on that one.
So they'll still have their sidewalk in the front,
yeah,
not the back, because on the back is the meandering path.
in the
The back of the driveway?
No, on the
Oh.
far right there.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So we would kind of what we're saying, instead of having a sidewalk here where really they're just pulling in, have it more in the front of where they're gonna be walking, the kids are gonna be playing, type of thing. So
Can I ask, so this is more like it's kind of sort of like an alleyway.
Alley,
It's
yeah,
not, but
yeah.
it's more like an alleyway.
Mhm.
Somewhere, oh, my light just died. On the side there, that doesn't look like an alleyway to me.
Shauna?
Oh, thank you. So right here, that doesn't seem like an alleyway, but like,
yeah.
yeah.
So we've kept sidewalk there on this project. So it would almost only be used when it's kind of an alleyway type situation.
So you'd still have landscaping along here,
Yeah.
along here, and anyway, we'll talk about that part later.
Yeah.
So there's only one, there'll be a sidewalk here, but not on this side.
In this situation, there is on both, but
Oh,
there's no sidewalk down this road, basically. Is what
So that
what it's
road-
getting rid of, yeah. We have two connections to public roads and.
so on the
have a public road
sidewalk
here.
right here,
Yeah.
you've got a sidewalk, right?
No, because we would
Sidewalk's
consider it
only
out
in
here.
front?
Yeah, yeah,
And down this road, there's no sidewalk?
correct, yeah,
Those are both the back,
yeah.
and then
And the driveways
got it
are
across the front.
very close, yeah.
So the exceptions you're asking for would only be in the case of something like this?
Yeah.
Not
and
necessarily
it-
exceptions
and-
on this side,
Correct, and the note leaves it up to the city engineer to kind of make that judgment.
given other circumstances
Yeah.
that might exist in that
So
area.
like this one, you're kind of held to Main Street, and then you got the river, so right away, I guess this way is a little tough, so it kind of helps out a little bit with that, but also where there's so many driveways, it didn't make sense necessarily to us to have a sidewalk right there. We imagine most of the kids and pedestrians will be out in this area, kind of in the front, so.
It decreases the distance they have from the road to their unit, being just a 20-foot for the drive, because we would add that extra buffer strip length onto
Yeah.
on the setback, right?
Yeah,
It'd be another 13 feet.
So it's more
each
units they
side.
can fit on the lot,
Yeah.
where we have less depth in that area.
yeah.
Okay, so this sidewalk right here, does it still have the park strip,
Yes.
or is it curb and gutter sidewalk yard?
No, this one particular still does have the park strip, yes.
Why?
Well, this one's actually a trail and then it's Main Street, so we're, in this situation, we're following Main Street's cross-section. And so there's a park strip along Main Street.
And that's because we want to have space between the trail and the curb. We want to have that be tree lined, and that's what's proposed. And this situation, I think, is probably a little bit unique from how this often would be used, in that here you'll have the new curb. I think it'll be new
Yeah.
for Main Street.
It's new, yeah.
Then you'll have a park strip. Then you'll have a trail. Then you'll have a
All
wrought
fence.
iron looking fence. Then you'll have more landscaping. Then you'll have what we're calling calling the sidewalk on the development side, and a little bit of space between that sidewalk and the townhomes, and then you'd have the townhomes. So there's quite a bit more going on the Main Street side here than what we have, for example, proposed on the other side, which is just a porch going to the unit and a walkway that leads out to the sidewalk that parallels the building elevation, that kind of a thing. And I just, if I may, one other way that I think we would often describe the situations here in our office, where you have, we'd call it a front-loaded townhome, where the front door and the garage are on the same side of the building. This doesn't work, what we're talking about here. This only works where the garage is on the opposite elevation from the front door. We call that a rear-loaded townhome. And one of the things that we've seen in projects where we do have a regular local street cross-section, typically 60 feet, with an 8-foot park strip and a 5-foot sidewalk, and the units, and it's the same for front load and rear, but particularly with rear, you just get an additional 8 feet of drive approach. You know, where you're dealing with 20-foot driveways, that is 20 feet in width, and then you have a small gap before you get to the next driveway, and you have the flares where it does come out to the street. In my view, you end up with a lot of paved space that really doesn't do any good. So in this case, the idea is if we're more efficient here, we should be able to expect applicants to do a better job on the other side. We've thought that if they're maintaining the regular asphalt width there, there's no reason for an HOA to have to maintain that as a private alleyway. The folks that live here, they'll be paying gas tax and property taxes and all of the things that other residents are doing that have access to public streets. Those are some of the things that we've thought about as we've tried to come up with solutions for situations like this. This isn't the only project that currently we're talking about potentially being able to use this option for. But it is a really good example because you do have both what would be the regular 60-foot right-of-way there, and man, that is really gone. The one where, and obviously we're talking about right there that parallels Main Street. You have those two different ones.
Are there any other, so for instance, are there any other places on this development besides this alleyway or this road that would be given the exception?
No, so for example, this is short enough
Yeah.
that we are just calling that a private driveway. We're not comfortable calling something that's that long and that connects in with a couple of public streets like that, a private drive, which is something there's a lot of different things that have gone into our conversations, but we are really, and have been for a number of years, conscientious about trying to have fewer private driveways in projects like this.
So this is a private driveway, which means there's not a sidewalk there,
There's not a sidewalk on the, exactly.
right
Yep.
there.
There
My
won't be a
concern with
sidewalk.
that is there's people walking to these.
Yeah, I think that's legitimate.
Yeah, because you've got those units right there, with no sidewalk whatsoever. Because their backyard backs against the others.
But
I think
those
it's
would
at
still
the
be-
road? Is that how
Would
it
those
is?
still be rear-loaded
No, that's a front-loaded
on
townhome.
that side, yeah?
I think these are intended to be the same units or homes as what's shown through here.
But they've got there's no sidewalk.
As proposed, that's my understanding. Yeah.
We couldn't do a sidewalk right against the curb?
There's no reason that you couldn't do that I'm aware of.
It's not shown, it could.
You'd have, but it's not shown currently. That's right.
And who maintains the park strip along here between the road and the sidewalk?
In this case, that would be a homeowners association.
Because I'm just not impressed with that throughout the city.
Okay. It may be hit and miss. We have some homeowners associations that, in my opinion, do a better job than a lot of homeowners do with the park strips next to their homes. So it probably a little hit and miss.
Dave, so before, or Byron, we've talked several times, sorry, Dave. Often the garages are used as storage. We have cars being parked out here in front. Is 20 feet without the buffer strip and sidewalk going to be adequate, or are we going to have trucks sticking out into the roadway?
I think for majority of vehicles, it's enough length. I think most vehicles are shorter than 20 feet, but if you have a longer truck or something, yeah, you might stick out a little bit.
That's one of the concerns we've had in past meetings talking about townhomes, that the garage is another storage unit.
Yeah, we could, if you wanted, you could make it at 20 foot, a little longer, like 25, but
I think it's a real
Something
good.
to think about, yeah.
yeah.
I think the other thing too is I assume that if it's this way, that parking wouldn't be allowed on the road?
Correct. On
Yeah.
the
Okay,
No
and
space
then-
should be blocking the
Okay.
garage, the drive.
And then
Exactly, yeah.
in a neighborhood right next to me, there's one side that doesn't have sidewalk and the other side does, but it doesn't have a park strip. I would be more comfortable with that.
How about on the private drive?
You're gonna have,
I think you need a sidewalk on the private
There's gonna
drive
be
if you're
parking
gonna have the
issues.
parking there.
on both sides, or
I think one side is probably okay. I don't know. They're trying to fit a lot in there, and I get that. But I still think there needs to be a little bit of walkability even along the driveway areas.
I don't get how you'd say one side but not the other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it works well in my neighborhood. And it's along condos.
Dave, you said something about you'd expect the applicants to maximize the lots or maximize the layouts if we're doing this. What, or, I can't remember how you put that. What were you saying there? Because all I see is we make it easier for more to fit in the lot. They're going to fit more in the lot. And without consideration for what the other impacts may be. We'll be looking at what the bottom line is.
yeah, if I remember correctly, I was referring to the idea that there really isn't a lot of opportunity to do landscaping well
Mhm.
in what, and I think comparing this to an alley is appropriate.
Yeah.
We're using distinct phraseology for a meaningful purpose, but in those situations, because so much of it by necessity ends up being paved, you just can't do much.
And
But
you really don't want to be directing foot traffic where you have that many cars pulling
Appreciate
in and
that.
out.
I
or backing
agree.
out.
right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So,
I
but
agree with the premise underlying this. I'm just wondering if there's maybe, I would like to see a bit longer driveway and something like that.
Okay.
That's my thoughts on the matter. But other than that, I get the premise for why we're doing it, and I like that. Some of the concerns that Sean and David brought up about the private driveway, I can see that too. I think that might be something to be considered. But that's kind of a site-specific, maybe not the ordinance,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
You almost gotta look at it each
topic.
side.
by way of maximizing, we would hope that the opportunity on the front door side of the home, that's where you can do lavish landscaping. You can get what effectively then become, like in this sort of situation here, street trees and that type of a thing, as opposed to, you know, where I think it's just a lot harder to do.
Right. And would be a hindrance. I mean, we don't want hedges and that on, as you're backing out of your driveway.
They don't survive.
Yeah.
I mean, we've forced the issue with very good intentions over the years. Trees get killed, the shrubbery gets destroyed. So
Back. Well, I know it's a public hearing, but when you guys make your motion too, if you want any changes to that wording, we can update that if we need to, but.
Would that be update, just have you guys reconsider and amend it and come back to us with that, or what would we be looking at?
what I've heard you say is that you're concerned about 20 feet of driveway depth being adequate.
That's me. I don't know about my
Okay.
other commissioners.
So
Would agree.
we certainly could make that change and bring it back. If that's the only change you're as a commission wanting to see, I think that'd be a waste of your time. We could simply have you recommend that it be changed before it's presented to the city council. But we can handle it however you'd like.
So on the Main Street frontage, this is what we're looking at?
No, because
5 foot sidewalk, 8 foot?
no, Main Street's a collector road, so our cross section's actually 12-foot park strip, and on that area it's a 10-foot trail. And then you have 4 feet to a fence, and then back there is HOA property development.
So what are we looking at here?
Just residential, 60 foot, just a regular 60-foot residential. So basically, it just takes these off.
So on that street we're looking at in the Creekside development, it would be that road on that back, the
Yeah,
one back from
same
Main Street,
asphalt, same curb.
if we didn't go with what they showed.
Yeah,
And the Main Street would look like this
no.
on Main
um,
Street?
Not on Creekside. Main Street is wider. It's a 5-lane.
Right, Main Street's right, but I'm talking so from curb and gutter,
Yeah, it's 12 feet park strip, 10-foot trail. Then a fence, like a property at the property line, wrought iron, and then it's landscaping, sidewalk, and then your townhome or.
So my question is, Todd, what do you think is if we're changing this ordinance, what's a adequate length for a driveway?
Good question. I'd like to see 25.
That's what I was referring to.
I just Googled as we were talking about this for the average length of an F-150, which I know a lot of people in this town drive. If you get the longer F-150 with the longer bed, that's over 20 feet. That's 20 and a half feet long. So I think having an additional space on the back, five additional feet sounds very reasonable to me.
Yeah, Dave's truck's probably 24 feet long.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking is why we've got so much room from Main Street to the sidewalk in the front. That's my only thing. We could shrink that up.
topic. That's
Right.
besides
And
this.
give
but-
more room in the backyard.
I think the spacing that we're talking about here is not entirely different if we went a little bit further to the north on Main Street, where the bigger apartment buildings are being built now. I think it's very similar to that in terms of the park strip
Yeah,
is there a trail there? I want to say there is, but
sidewalk.
it's just a sidewalk.
Oh,
So
it's-
there, instead of a 10-foot trail, there's a 5-foot sidewalk. Then you have the fence. Then you have landscaping and the building and so forth.
So, okay, so we're looking at this. This is what is required currently if we didn't change the ordinance. And so then if we go back to this, the Creekside map, then, so this is what is required. And
Correct.
so what the proposal is that you can take out this right here, keep a 20-foot, oh, that's not a driveway, that's a lane.
It's a
Yeah,
road.
20 feet
That's
is
the
That'd
road.
be in front of the building.
Driveway's right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
20-foot driveway. And what and so this can be given the exception to not have it here, but we are saying on something like that, you really need another 5 feet for a driveway if you're not gonna be
Yeah.
required to have a sidewalk or a park strip. Sounds like that's
Yeah,
what
that's kind of
several of
what
us
we're
are
talking about, yeah.
asking.
Mm-hmm.
I feel comfortable with that.
Okay.
Anything else to add?
I don't know.
We might have you come back up if
Okay.
anybody has anything to address. So this is a public hearing. If anybody is here to speak on this matter, would love to hear your comments. Okay. I see somebody moving a little bit.
Do it.
Come on up to the podium, introduce yourself so everybody can know who you are, and then speak your
Maybe we
mind.
go back to the,
Can you introduce yourself, please,
my
sir?
name is Brent McKell,
Okay,
and I own the property to the east
Creekside.
of the development.
Yeah.
And I've just always been, in fact, I made an agreement with the city to guarantee me easements into my property. And so I'm just trying to understand this map and understand if it shows any easements.
Well, probably, this is gonna be a topic, one of our meeting agenda items coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll probably go over that, probably be able to talk about that more specifically then. I don't know if anybody from staff wants to tackle that now, or if we wanna wait till we bring up Creekside. The staff is not looking at me. Okay.
That's my only
So, yeah,
concern.
if we can call you back up then, or if you want to come and speak then, I believe that's a public hearing also. So, actually, we can have somebody address that, but, yeah. Okay, so if there's no other comments on this meeting topic, we'll close public hearing. Commissioners, any other questions or opinions to state for staff?
I think you're right on I think 5 foot would help big time because there's some big trucks around here.
It's just been a concern. We've had that with most of our townhome developments. It's been a concern. And as we have done field trips driving through different things that we've approved over the years, it's been something we pointed out.
Yep.
So I think I don't know how you guys feel, but I like Dave's opinion of just making that a condition in the motion. If somebody'd like to make that.
Sure, I will. Okay, I move that the proposal, the ST 503 update proposal Be recommended to the city council with the additional condition on the number 6 notes for a 25-foot driveway.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. The next item of business is also a public hearing. This is the Title 15 amendment. Dave, you're going to address this one?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This proposed text amendment to Title 15 it has come about as the result of conversations that we've had that tie to a couple of map amendments that are also on your agenda tonight. And there's something of a follow-up to conversations that we've had over the course of the past couple of years about the city's current zoning limitations on a particular use, impound yards. Up until, maybe a decade or so ago, probably a little bit more than that, impound yards, tow yards, I think we called them at the time, weren't allowed use in the city's I-1 zone. And again, about 12 years ago, the city changed its allowed uses in the I-1 zone to no longer allow tow yards. The majority of the community's industrial zoning is I-1, so making that change had the effect of really limiting the locations that would be available for somebody to get a business license to operate a tow yard or an impound yard from. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I would say probably really starting a couple of years ago, our office started to receive inquiries about different businesses' needs to find locations in the community where they could get a business license for an impound yard. That led even, I think, to some conversations that we had with the Planning Commission about a year and a half ago, and a proposal that ultimately did not get approved by the City Council to make impound yards an allowed use in the I-1 zone. And that's how things still are now. So the vast majority of the community, in fact, it's only properties that are zoned I-2 and I-3. We have very limited locations right now that have that zoning in Spanish Fork where you can get a business license for a new impound yard. That being said, from my perspective, maybe looking from the economic development or from the economic development side of things, even in a lot of ways I would say from the land use side of things, I don't think impound yards necessarily are the most desirable use to have at a lot of locations in the community. City makes big investments in our industrial areas to be able to accommodate different uses that provide a lot of employment, that produce things, that use the robust utilities that we're installing in those parts of the community, that generate property tax, different things that to a large degree impound yards just don't do. So as staff, we're very sensitive to making changes that allow for properties on a large scale to be underutilized, or maybe just otherwise I'd say poorly utilized. So as we've talked about ways to maybe be somewhat more accommodating of impound yards without, maybe protecting the city as best as we can, rather than to do one thing that we've talked about very recently, which would be to change our regulations for the I-1 zone to somehow make impound yards allowed in the I-1 zone. We've instead come about with the suggestion of changing how impound yards are allowed in the I-2 zone, which is where they're permitted today, changing that so that they would no longer simply be a permitted use. Permitted meaning that's something that somebody can do by right. To a different kind of use where also somebody can do it by right, but they have to meet certain criteria before they ultimately could get, let's just say, a business license and operate an impound yard. So striking it from the list of permitted uses and instead making impound yards a use subject to conditions, and those conditions being spelled out under M, I think on the next slide, under the supplementary regulations. We feel that the approach of increasing, even though I would say it's in kind of a nominal way, the requirements that have to be met to have a new impound yard in Spanish Fork, and then still only allowing those new impound yards where properties are zoned I-2 will most often require folks to do what, again, we talked about later tonight, with proposals to change the zoning of specific sites to our medium industrial zone, the I-2 zone, in order to be able to have an impound yard. I think this could be considered like a belt and suspenders type of an approach, but the idea of needing to amend the zoning map to have a new impound yard, that's the safest way to make sure that you would have an opportunity to review every proposal for a new impound yard site, to make a recommendation on a zone change for that, and then the city council, of course, ultimately has the opportunity to decide. And I think they have wide discretion as to whether or not they would approve a zone change for I-2 zoning to accommodate a new impound yard. For me, the most important part of what we're talking about here with the supplementary regulations is limiting the size of a new impound yard to something less than 30,000 square feet. As I mentioned a minute ago, I think several of us on the part of staff were concerned about having, maybe acres of land that's used, for outdoor storage or tow yards, impound yards, different things. That certainly there is a need in a community like Spanish Fork for those uses. But we'd like to see space dedicated to those uses used as efficiently as possible. And also, we'd like to see those uses located at maybe what would be very undesirable locations for other things. Like, we would not recommend likely that the zoning be changed for a property along North Main Street so somebody can put an impound yard up against a busy thoroughfare with great access and visibility and different things that people might want to have for some type of an office use or, maybe manufacturing or different things that would benefit from that kind of situation. Instead, it would be more like the two locations that we'll talk about a little bit later tonight, remnant properties that have maybe some situational defects and that type of a thing, and limited in size. So I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense. Please tell me where.
I just have a couple
Yeah.
questions. Okay, so I'm looking at this I-2 medium industrial, and they're in Section A. There are several that are permitted uses, doesn't have to come before us, just needs to talk to you, and they need to develop it. Then B is uses subject to conditions, and that's where we're looking at moving impound yards to. And does that need, if they meet the conditions in M that we're just looking at, does it need to come before us?
It would not if the property is zoned I-2.
Okay, but then C is conditional use permit, and those are ones that come before us.
That is correct.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So the two that we're talking about tonight are existing.
They are not existing.
The one along Third West is not an impound yard now?
Not in any regard like what we're talking about tonight. So it would be issuing a new business license for a new location, defining new space as an impound yard.
And they would have to comply with this goes through, passes, goes before the council passes. They then have to comply with the conditions in M.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to understand from the M condition, we have 30,000 feet listed as the size for the impound yard itself. I assume that's not an actual limitation on the property size, right?
Correct.
Just that portion is all that could be used on that property. They could use the property for
Correct.
if they were a multi-acre property.
Yes. We have asked that the space that would be dedicated to the impound yard use and that, for example, would be fenced and different things like that be clearly identified.
Okay.
And, that'll be
But
noted.
we
and-
could not extend, through just creative parking through or
Not,
skills, yeah.
yeah, not without having some consequence.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Dave. We'll open
Thanks.
up the public hearing. This is also a public hearing. If anybody's here to talk about this issue, would love to have your comments or concerns. Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any additional thoughts?
I like what they've done as far as the gravel and the fence and stuff. I'm just in this industry enough. I hope they follow it because the places I have to go get these cars, sometimes I know they don't. And so I love the guidelines. I hope they're followed. So.
Great.
I think we're looking at additional regulations here. They seem reasonable. Obviously, we're restricting to certain zones. I like what we've added here. I don't think it's unduly burdensome. But
We've restricted, we're not changing the zones. It's adding some adding some restrictions to the zone that's already allowed in.
yeah.
The restrictions being added are
Section M.
fencing,
Paved.
lighting.
Lighting.
Okay.
All things that seem to make sense as you develop properties around these areas.
You're right.
I might just add that, as I understand it, the state imposes certain requirements on impound yards. Certainly some of what we have here, I think overlaps with the state's requirements. I think the paved apron onto the site, that's probably, I believe that's something that's distinct from what the state requires. We would, and incidentally, we require that today for any outdoor storage areas, primarily to keep our streets clean. We don't want people tracking out road base, mud, gravel, those types of things onto the street.
That's what I was going to ask. I
That-
mean, it's pretty standard. Anybody, new properties, you've got to have a paved,
Exactly. Yeah.
put in your,
But I think, for example, like the fencing and stuff like that, that is also required by the state. Yeah, potentially, yeah, in situations where a wall would be required, I think that just comes into play with proximity to a public right-of-way. That definitely is distinct from what the state requires. It's new.
Any other questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion if anybody has one to make.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Title 15 Amendment I-2 impound yards change to modify requirements for impound yards in the I-2 medium
Are we
zone.
approving it or recommending it? We're recommending it for approval.
Recommending for approval.
Okay. So you want to restate it?
Yeah, I move that we recommend for approval I-2 impound yard change to the Title 15 Amendment to modify impound yards in the I-2 medium industrial zone.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion will go before the council. Sorry, it's just important here. We get that right. Next, we go into section of zone changes, which all these are also a public hearing. The first one being the Freddy's impound yard application.
We're staying on theme with this one, so
Good. We
Get
like to
comfortable, guys.
kind of follow plot till it's
yeah,
done.
use that knowledge you just kind of learned from the last one. Okay, this is the Freddy's Impound Yard zone change. This one's located at 1412 North, 300 West, and it's about 0.3 acres. That's just the impound yard itself, not the whole lot. The whole lot's a little bigger than 0.3 acres. The property is currently zoned I-1 light industrial with a general plan designation of commercial. The applicant has applied for a zoning amendment in order to change the rear portion. So if you go to the next slide, it might show it a little easier. Yeah, just to change the rear portion of this lot, which is about 12,960-ish square feet from I-1 to I-2 medium industrial in order to operate an impound yard. As we just talked about, impound yards not allowed in the I-1 zone, so need a zone change to the I-2. A lot of the surrounding uses, or a lot of the surrounding zoning, sorry, as you can see, is I-1, quite an industrial area. The lot that this is proposed on is a very deep lot. It's about 670 square feet, or sorry, not square feet, 670 feet deep in total. Once again, that's the whole lot, not just the impound yard. And impound yard is much less than 670 feet long. And so the impound yard will only be on that little piece in the back. The applicant has provided the city with a legal description, so that way the boundaries of the impound yard are very clear and can be mapped out. We just talked about the staff or the text amendment that would impose additional conditions upon impound yards. So this one would be subject to that as well, including the fencing and a rock base of some kind. Staff feels like due to the location of this impound yard being so far set back from the street, it makes it a pretty good location throughout the community for one. And some of the other issues to consider here are any future uses of the property, the site improvements themselves, and the text amendment which you guys just approved. The DRC recommended approval of this proposed Freddy's impound yard based on the findings and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. Any questions?
What's this being used for right now? This behind the property behind?
Dave, do you know what that site to the east is being used as right now? The
I think it's
next parcel over?
I don't believe we've approved a site plan for
vacant
that.
right now.
Vacant? Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now it's being used for
That site
The
to the
which?
east?
I'm just wondering about the property that, this property.
Oh, it's vacant. I don't think there's been a site plan
vacant.
approval
Yeah,
for it.
That's my,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
where's the access to that property?
It's
It's coming in from 300 south,
Yeah.
300 west,
yep.
down that lane. Okay, so
Yep.
they've got to build a new road to get there.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure exactly what the status of it is. I believe the applicant's here and could maybe speak to the current condition, the existing conditions of it, but yeah, that's where access would come from.
And do they have to have the same kind of, so the surface on here has to be rock or asphalt or something based on what we just did?
Correct.
And
At
does
least
this have to
gravel.
be paved with the same gravel, pavement, something, the access to it?
Yes, that does.
Okay.
So would we require a road to be put in all the way, asphalt, so they could start utilizing that property? Or, because right now, there's not a asphalt road to there.
Correct. There is asphalt and concrete here. So what, and this is just happenstance, that on this property, talking about that drive approach or apron requirement, one of the supplementary regulations, that is in place here. And provided that exists from that point to the impound yard, I believe they just need to have an all-weather passable road, which that could be road base, that could be gravel, that could be asphalt, that could be a lot of different things.
So in order for us to permit them there, they wouldn't have to put the road in all the way to the property as far as hard surfaced asphalt, curb and gutter, et cetera.
Exactly.
Is that
yes.
the finding that is number 2, the needed public improvements to the larger parcel's frontage on 300 West have already been made? Is that
Yes.
what's being referred to there?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, along 300 West,
Yeah, it's improved, and a portion of the site is improved as well, so in this case.
So that makes me question, going back, I mean, we've already moved on from the previous one, but it makes me question our supplement M here, because it seems like it would make sense to at least have an access. Like if we go to M1 from our previous one, M1 shouldn't it have the same surface approach driveway as what we're requiring for the impound yard?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're asking, right?
So you don't want to see it go from pavement to dirt back to pavement.
Correct.
In the area we're talking about.
I mean, that
is the
makes
concern.
sense, right?
Right.
I think most often it would go from pavement to road base, and the tow yard would be road base.
Right.
So, not that that makes a difference, but that's.
But the
that
question
the
is, should we
intent.
revisit the other and modify that to say, and there's probably not a lot of times when that would happen, but on this one, maybe that would be better. Am I being too picky?
No, you're not, because that's a question I have, because I mean, I'm new to the council here, but a lot of people have told me, you know, in order to improve their property, to do something, they're required to put in the road, the curb and gutter, the improvements. And then we've got this one, that they're landlocked, they're in a tight spot, and you're not going to require them to put a road all the way to their property. And I know other businesses, homes, everything else, they've had to put in light poles, everything.
For sure.
To get their occupancy.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, are we making an exception?
Well, I'll tell you what.
And I'm new here, so I don't know.
Speak your mind.
We have not had a lot of conversations like this in the time that I've been here. So it is a little bit of a unique situation, a little bit of a unique approach. Where we are in the agenda is a little bit unique for what we're talking about. Vaughn might be able to give us some guidance here, but I think the supplementary regulations and what is expected of people that want to have new impound yards approved, that's part of what is before the commission tonight. You have our proposal to staff and what the DRC's made a recommendation on, but if you feel like that should be changed, I think that's partly why I think that's entirely why it's on your agenda, is for you to review that.
Yeah.
So
Dave,
can-
there's nothing wrong. We do it all the time. If you want to add to staff's findings and conditions, as a commissioner, you can do that.
Site-specific too, as part of it.
Personally, I'm okay with, I like it. I don't mind it, because it's their property. They should be able to have access and do something with it. I just feel for others along in the past that have been held to a higher standard.
Well, and I think if you're gonna be picking your cars up in the back, you gotta hope it's road base all the way through instead of mud puddles and holes and.
Yes.
Commissioners, maybe I could recommend, like, once you've acted on this zone change, you could move to reconsider the text amendment that you did previously, and then you could add another provision to that, having a all-weather driveway surface to the lot, continuous from the public street to the impound yard.
Great. Does that sit right with you guys?
I think so, if we can go back and change the other,
Okay.
because of the one thing.
Yeah, I'm good. I want to give them access to their property, use it how they see fit. It's within zoning. I'm good with it.
I like the spot for an impound yard.
I do.
I think it's a good spot for it if they're meeting the conditions and if it satisfies the other commissioners' concerns, and
Yeah, I'll echo that. It seems to be about as good as it could get for that location, so.
And it's great, because I've had to get a car out of impound and I would rather go to Spanish than Provo. So,
So this is a public hearing. I need to open up for public hearing. Then we can discuss it more unless anybody has anything else they want to add before we do that.
Do we hear from the applicant before public
Oh,
hearing or
that's
after?
probably a good point. Thank you. Is the applicant here? If you don't want to speak, you don't have to speak, but we'd love to hear from you.
guys have any questions or?
If you come at the microphone, we'd like to put you on the spotlight so the people on the TV can see you.
Okay.
If you could state your name and just,
Okay, so
That'd be
my
great.
name is Federico Cuejo, aka Freddy. But
Okay.
so I've been running an impound logging here for like 6 years, like just right next to like 20 feet away from there. So we
Mm-hmm.
find this new area that we would like to have it in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's hiding. You cannot see it from anywhere else. So I think I don't know.
okay. Does anybody have any questions for?
And we have like what did we have on the driveway? We have road base in there. There's no puddles in there, and then big rocks and all that stuff. So
May I see the pointer? This first portion, if I remember right, driving down through there, this, where am I at here? This first portion is paved, right?
yeah, it's paid. Yeah.
It's paved till right, well, you can see the line right there, and then this is road base?
And there's like, what is that right now? That is road base. That's road base, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Thank you, we appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
So now we'll open public hearing. Is anybody here to address this?
Go back to that other drawing there.
You please come up to the microphone so everybody can hear you. We have to make this a public record. State your name, please.
I am Bruce Long. I'm the property owner here.
Okay.
I've been talking to Freddie and Dave Pino that are the tow companies that want to come in here. Can I borrow a pointer from somebody?
Is there not one there?
Oh, there is one here. Sorry. I'm new here, like you. Okay, currently right down here, this is asphalt. Then it's road base back to this fence here. On this property, we have a 15-foot easement on both sides of the property line. And the property line comes right down the center all the way back here. This fence is currently on property line. We're going to have to move it back 15 feet to give them the road width that I think it said a 25-foot foot road going into this place, and that'll give them 30 feet there. Currently, well, the landowner on this side of the property, he's getting ready to build a building. And so, and I don't know how many of you know about that, but right now he's talking about coming back here with an asphalt and then a big turnaround right here that will be all asphalt. And so that'll extend the asphalt portion of this driveway clear back. And he's going to take this fence, put a fence across here, and then we'll move that fence over to the north and give these guys better access into the backyard. And the back portion of it going in, you know, from here on back will be a road base type driveway. I just wanted to clarify that for you guys
Appreciate
because
that.
I know you had some questions of what the surface was going to be and whatnot. So they've been renting this previously, and so they were right out here on the main or on Third West frontage. And I just really think it'll be better to just put them back in the, well, I guess down here, put them back in this corner where once they develop the property east of us, that would pretty well box them in so it's not a visible eyesore to the city.
Yeah.
And so, you got any questions for me?
No, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else? Okay, close public hearing on that. Commissioners, any other discussion points? Okay. Does anybody have a motion for me?
I'll make a motion that we accept it as proposed.
Make a motion that's approved based on the staff's findings and conditions.
Right.
Try it again.
Motion approved, or motion, I'm new to this, but upon staff's finding and conditions and approval.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
A motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. The next topic is the Oakleberry trucking zone change.
Chairman, could I move that we revisit the
Oh,
previous?
Do you want to do that now? Great.
Let's just hop back while it's on our head.
Do we need Dave?
So
Need to come
back
from-
to,
I'll second that.
The motion is second to revisit the
5A.
Title 15 amendment. So if we can open that one back up.
I would move that we modify this proposal to include in M1 that there be a all-weather surface road base approach drive from the road to the impound area,
From public access.
from public access to the impound yard area. Does that meet what we'd like?
That's what you guys described.
Sounds right. Yeah. Second?
Motion is second. All in favor?
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just quick question by way of right now, the drive apron shall be paved with concrete or asphalt 26 feet wide and no less than 60 feet long.
Is that saying exactly what we're asking for?
No, it's not.
No, so where what you said, I think, potentially conflicts with the all-weather surface road, potentially road base, going to the public right-of-way, we would expect if there's road base on the site between the right-of-way and the impound yard, as likely would be the case in what we're looking at with Freddy's, that the road base would start at the end of that 60
End
feet
of that 60 feet.
of asphalt.
The minimum of 60 feet.
Yeah, so I might just tweak what you said a little bit
Yes.
to where effectively it would be that, at the end of the required drive apron, there would at least be a road base, all-weather surface
All-weather.
road to the impound yard, something like that.
Yeah,
If that's what you mean, and that's.
I think
that's what she's
that's
getting
what we mean, yes.
Okay. Got it.
So do we need to restate that, or is that clear to staff?
Is that clear enough
If
to
you're-
for
I
the
got it.
record?
So we'll take it from there.
Okay, I think we're clear. I think that's everybody's intentions.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a
Thank
good
you.
concern.
Yeah.
Great, thank you for the clarification, Dave. That got to maybe not the letter of what we said, but the spirit of what was being said.
Yeah.
We'll try to get it both. So.
Yes, thank you. So now we go to the Oakleberry trucking zone change. Thank you for taking a pause for a moment.
Okay, if you can go ahead and go to the next one. Next one. There we go. Okay, so this is a similar proposal for a rezone from the I-1 to the I-2 zone. This is on a 3.72 acre parcel located approximately 1,800 north and 200 east. Currently in the I-1 zone with the industrial land use. If you go to the next slide. So there's the zone, and then the next slide has the land use. Go ahead and move to the next one. So their proposal is to use that back triangular corner of the property that covers approximately 6,300 square feet to rezone that to the I-2 medium industrial zone based with the legal description similar to the previous proposal. In speaking with the applicant, they initially, as you can see in their request, said that they were intending to also use that area for abandoned motorhomes or RVs. In speaking with them, they said that they're okay with not keeping them at this location, but taking them to their location in Orem. So that would not be something that would be located here. It would be subject to the proposed amendment for impound yards that you've already heard. If you go to the next slide, I provided this to kind of give you a look at the different viewpoints to the site. So on the left, the picture number 1, you can see that red arrow kind of showing where it would be proposed from 200 East, and then the picture on the right from the off-ramp off of I-15, that triangle by the billboard. So you can see it definitely has limited visibility. Wouldn't be something that would be an eyesore similar to the previous proposal. So based on that and the conditions that are in the staff report, staff is recommending approval. Happy to answer any questions.
You said this would be a holding area for abandoned.
They initially said that it would be for cars and RVs.
Oh, but
And
he
we said that we prefer that they don't store RVs at this location. It would just be vehicles.
just vehicle.
Because the adjacent business, or?
Just there, that was something that came up when it was presented to DRC, that they had some concern about storing large RVs there as well.
Mhm.
So staff, or the applicant said that they were fine keeping those at a different location.
Any other questions? Do we want to hear from the applicant? Thank you, David. Is the applicant here? I'm guessing not. Okay. It's a public hearing. Is anybody here to speak on this matter? Please, if you are, please come up to the microphone.
Sorry.
No
I
problem.
don't even know if this is the right. Anyway, I'm Sabrina Clark. I guess my question is like, when you're looking at this stuff, is it kind of an approval for the tow yards as well, or is it just strictly for the zoning and stuff? Because I guess what I'm getting at is Larry's and Stouffer's is heavy duty, which we don't have that here in Spanish Fork, but they are on the South County heavy duty list already. So all of those motorhomes and trailers that our trucks can't handle because we're light duty, some medium duty, they already tow them and they already take them to their other location. And so I guess what I'm getting at is this kind of an approval for tow companies at the moment too, or is it just strictly for the zoning?
We would be strictly for the zoning.
Okay.
But it would, then that opens up the door for that towing company come in to use that space for their storage. I mean, it's a step along the way. It's a big step along the way. I think Vaughn could probably speak to that more directly.
Yeah, exactly. The application is just for that one rezone, that little triangle in the corner. So it is a rezone to that I-2 there, but only for that small area.
Yeah. So this is 6,300 square feet, so there's not a lot that's going to be stored in that spot.
Right, and I know where that is,
Yeah.
and I've talked to the renter of that area, but I was just like, it sounds selfish, but it's kind of like a city, or where like a community type thing, you know, and to get your heavy duties back in here where it's like, well, you already do the heavy duty towing, so we almost don't need more tow companies in here. And so I'm just wondering if it's like something that I can fight at this time with the zoning, or if I should wait.
You can make a comment on the zoning ordinance. That's totally applicable. That's what public hearing is about if you have a concern with it.
I just don't want another tow company in here. But that's me. Well, and they're now a corporation, so they're a huge franchise where the rest of us are, you know, like locals. And so it's kind of like, because we're on Mapleton, and the chief of police is like, why is somebody clearing Orem on my rotation? That's going to take them forever to get down here. So it's just keeping it small and in the community is kind of what I like to see too, because we'll be sitting and we're like, is the other tow truck ever coming? Like, do you want us to take it? So that's in Mapleton, of course, but anyway, I don't like the zoning, but that's me, just because I'm in the towing business, so
Sure.
to keep them out would be good for me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments from anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any other clarification on that, Vaughn? Do we need to talk anything more about that? The concern was that they're just opening up another towing company. Is there anything more to discuss on that?
She mentioned that, you know, they're coming all the way from Orem, and I think that is precisely the reason why they're looking to be here. I know that the Spanish Fork tow policy, the tow rotation policy requires them to have a yard in Spanish Fork. So if they get dispatched on a disabled vehicle, they have to have a yard here so it won't be coming all the way from Orem.
Does 6,300 feet meet a yard requirement? I mean, is
There's
there
no
any
minimum size
criteria for that?
that I'm aware of, just the maximum that we just recommended.
'Cause I see a difference between this and what we just approved just recommended for approval a moment ago.
That was
That's a substantial size. That's 5 times bigger than this.
Twice.
But that
The
was
other
the
one's
maximum.
12,000.
That was our
12,000.
maximum of
Yeah.
30,000 square feet.
30,000 is our
Right.
maximum.
That was
Yeah.
Exactly.
the
That's what's
maximum.
5 times.
So we didn't,
Instead
there's
of
no, not a
minimum.
minimum.
Yeah, not a minimum, I'm worried.
Okay, just wondering. I was just curious on that because I could see that being to meet the city's criteria. They could come rent as small a space as possible and qualify.
But I would think that just over 6,000 square foot, they're not gonna be able to keep very many vehicles there for very long. It'd be a quick turnaround.
And it's also a location that is very, very concealed and close to the freeway.
It's a good location.
Yeah.
Okay, so as someone, this is totally new to my whole brain tonight. So
You need to get your car towed
Let me
more.
just, say this for yeah, towing an impound yard for dummies is, here's what I'm hearing. This is a company who doesn't have an impound yard in this area, but they do in Orem. And if they they're applying to add an impound yard to Spanish Fork so that they can become part of the call-out rotation, which means there's one more company that's competing with the other tow companies. And that's their right to do, and if it makes sense. But I can see and understand where you're coming from on that. Okay.
Yeah. But for us, does this meet requirements for
Right.
our zone change?
Right,
City
okay.
would be good for the city.
Okay, that makes sense.
No other comments? I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion that we recommend for approval Oakleberry Trucking from I-1 Light Industrial to I-2 Medium Industrial
Based on the findings.
based on the findings and conditions.
I have a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Our next zone change is item C, Creekside Village zone change.
So I'll be presenting the zone change and the preliminary plat at the same time. It'll be 2 separate motions, but I'm just gonna cover all the information so that we can kind of talk about it all.
Can I just pause for a
at
second
once.
though?
Absolutely.
So just get a clarification on this, Dave. The zone change is a public hearing. Preliminary plat doesn't list it as a public hearing. So we'll just, if we present them both, we'll just have a public hearing that covers both of them. Right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the Creekside Village rezone and preliminary plat approval, or proposal. If you could go to the next slide. So we've got some aerial imagery for this site on Main Street, about 1500 South. Next slide. So you can see the existing building there. That kind of shows kind of the central portion of the proposed development. You can see the current zone is the rural residential zone, and the majority of the future land use shown is mixed use at this time. So this involves 3 parcels, 2 of which are privately owned. one is owned by the city. So the three parcels combined are 22.38 acres. So 17.53 acres are privately owned. City-owned is 4.85 acres. Next slide. So this shows the project area. So this would involve a land exchange where the city would exchange 3.12 acres to the developer. Those 3.2 acres are primarily outside of floodplain, so they'd be developable land. The developer would in turn exchange 6.3 acres on the south end that is primarily in the floodplain that would be used for a future a use as deemed by the city, whether it's for future trailhead or other recreational use. So based on that, the staff has spoken with the applicant to work up an appraisal to make sure that the value of land that's being exchanged is equal, and if there is a discrepancy in the value, then there'd be a monetary exchange included in that. Go to the next slide. So I've included a summary of the development. So the development project area is roughly 14.74 acres. There's 1.65 acres that are in the floodplain. So based on that, there'd be 13.08 acres that is developable, and that's where we base the density on. So they're proposing 172 units on that roughly 13 acres, which works out to a 13.15 units per acre density. That includes 98 three-story units and 74 two-story units. They've shown that they are meeting the minimum requirements for parking, both for guest parking and with each unit having a two-car garage and a two-car driveway. You can see kind of a rough mock-up of the two different styles of units there. Go to the next slide. So it's an overall site plan showing those units with the two-car garages, and we had briefly talked about the proposed new street profile where we would have no sidewalks and park strips on the interior. They'd be on the other sides. And in hearing the discussion that was brought up when that was being presented, I propose that you think about it the other way, that if we looked at it where, let's say we remove the sidewalks on the other side and put them on the interior with the garages, then we're probably pushing these buildings up closer to the street and making the space where the entrances to each unit would have a lot less usability. So I think that's where this new proposed street profile would work and benefit the overall design of the site by having some more space for use by the residents there.
Why are you saying it'd push it forward? I'm not saying it'd push it forward. I think it would push more space on the street, so it'd push that line back. It might limit what they could do on this back
Right,
section.
it would widen this
Yes.
with the park strip and the sidewalk
But it
on
wouldn't
this
change
side.
dimension for this front at all. That's still a required dimension.
Well, because this is a master planned overlay, there are some variations that could be proposed with that. But just looking at it as, do we want the sidewalks where we would have all the garages and all the cars would be, or do we want the sidewalk where the front of the
But I
units
don't
would
think we
be?
said anything about putting sidewalks back there. I think we just said lengthen the driveway.
Yeah. Yeah, we have no issue with the sidewalk part,
Okay,
just the driveway.
that's fine. I just wanted to kind of look at it the opposite way, just so we can kind of paint the picture of what's being proposed.
What's being proposed would have to change, so we'd be adding 10 feet in that between those two lines of townhomes. So that might adjust their density a bit. But
Okay, go to the next slide.
I'm just, on that one there, I'm just, all the congestion's gonna be on the back, in the back of the building, because there's no parking in front along Main Street.
Right.
So. I
So
would-
it'd keep the
I would
cars,
shrink
keep
up
the cars on the
frontage.
street here, and ideally keep the people away from the cars.
Right, and so I would give them more room here unless along here. Short,
But if they're visiting each other, or if they have guests coming, they need.
it's good, the congestion's all gonna be through here. There
Yeah.
won't be anything along Main Street, so
you
why
also
have
got-
a
you also
8-foot
got
park
the-
strip?
The
Well-
bill of Main Street.
Let's talk about there on Main Street. Could there be parking there on Main Street? And I know we have no use there, but is that a possibility at all with how we're developing this?
Well, they are showing, you can see on some of the other plans, they are showing, UDOT is requiring some deceleration lanes as you go into the development. So that would cut into any possibility of there being parking
So that would
on
require.
the street there.
Yeah, so there'd be no parking here. Would there be deceleration lanes here as well?
Yeah, it actually goes the whole
So
way.
the whole thing wouldn't be
Everything,
accessible.
Yeah, it's
everything
one
would be
extra lane.
contained in.
Yeah,
along-
and then you'd
in
have
here.
the fencing there as well too, so it wouldn't be ideal to have
Yeah.
And we had
parking there.
what size was the park strip out front?
12.
So it's 12-foot park strip, 10-foot trail, and then they're showing 20 feet between the building and the fence.
And then
That's
this,
quite a bit there.
Which is consistent with the rest of that area.
I think you have to have UDOT.
Yeah.
Okay, go to the next slide. So this is the building elevations for the 3-story units with you can see the rear side with the garages, the front side with lots of windows, trees, front doors, with different types of materials being proposed that are all part of the requirements for the R4 zone. I met with the architect to make sure that they were meeting the requirements to have different types of materials, different types of colors, to have some variation there. The next slide shows the 2-story units that would be on the southeast portion of the development. So these would be front-loaded with the garages and the front door, and then the rear would be facing the back area where you might have some patios or some open space.
Is this a tree or
Yeah,
a bush?
so these would have the street trees. You can see that on the landscape plan that'll be on the upcoming slide. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. These are the requirements that they're proposing some exceptions or some deviations to with respect to the roof pitch, some of the materials. The R4 zone has a maximum of a 6-plex building, and they are showing some 8-plex buildings in their layout. Also listed the amenities that they're showing on the site with a swimming pool, dog park, a clubhouse that would include a bicycle maintenance area. Would be beneficial for people using the trail. They're showing trail connections and a picnic area. You can see some renderings on the next 2 slides. There's a rendering of the swimming pool and the pickleball courts. You can kind of see how these buildings are the front of the 3-story units. They would have the road behind it with the garages. So you'd be able to walk out and have this open space that would be free from cars and be actively engaged by the residents. So there's a landscape plan showing street trees along all the public roads with some landscaping there. And then sidewalk there with street trees for the two-story units. There was another slight complication that came up during the review. Found that there's a tiny little sliver of property that is currently outside of the city boundary. So staff is working to annex that little triangle into it so it can be part of this development and legally be able to be zoned by the city and regulated by the city.
So is that the parcel that's currently owned by the city, but just a portion of it
So
is outside the
so
city?
this portion right here is part of that city-owned property, that's the majority of this yellow part that's outside of the city boundary. There's a tiny little sliver that you can barely see. It doesn't even cross into where any of the buildings would be located. But it would just be part of that to correct that so that the boundary follows the property lines.
Is that property owned by who owns that piece that's not annexed?
County.
So this is owned by the city,
But
but the
it's,
city boundary cuts across right here. So that just needs to be resolved so that it follows the property lines.
so it's owned by the city,
The
that,
city can own a property and it's not in the city?
We own quite
Yeah.
a few
Yeah.
that aren't in the city, yeah. The River Bottoms.
Oh, right.
Picture some of those,
Yeah.
among others.
so it's not a landowner that we're gonna have any issues with.
Well,
I would hope
the
not.
city, you never know,
We
so.
we could talk to them.
Yeah, we do know some people there.
Although there is a landowner behind there that needs access. That's what we.
Kind of on the other side.
Yes, and I
of the
can,
project.
if you
Yeah.
want to go back to the landscape plan, thank you, the next one, yeah. So this is one of the private driveways or private alleyways to access the garages here. And then there's also this private driveway here with a turnaround that would also provide access for the adjacent property owner. So that would be preserved so that he can access his property.
What does the existing access look like for this property owner?
It's not paved, it's just, I think it's just an easement right now.
Just an easement across that property?
Yeah.
Can he have a truck and pull a trailer on that?
Will that access allow them to develop in the future?
This would be a private access, so it's not intended to be a stub road to be developed
So
in the
his
future.
easement doesn't give them access for development at this time?
As far as I know, it doesn't, but
It would not meet any requirements that we have.
So we're not gonna landlock him and that landowner and
Yeah,
eliminate them from being able to do something with their property down the road?
the current situation is what it is, and I am not entirely familiar with arrangements that the city's made with that property owner to provide access. It's my understanding that providing access as is shown here, which is an opportunity to exit Main Street and to proceed over to that property through the proposed development, that satisfies the obligation that the city took on, I think, when our river trail was constructed a few years ago. Byron, maybe.
No, that's my same understanding, is there's not a exact location for that easement, it's just an access easement to go through that property to access the other property, so.
So in future uses though, I don't see that property, I don't know where that's defined on this slide, but would the floodplain land that is proposed to become the city's, would there be, in the future, could you have an easement through there to access that if we want to develop it, or how does that work?
Develop that small parcel between the river and the other property?
There's a remnant possible, I want to make an island, there's somebody else's property out there that's
yeah, I mean,
sandwiched between
the Spanish Fork River runs along here, so I don't know all the background as far as the history of the access or what the access is being used for. I
Zoom
think
out
we've
just a
got the property
titch.
owner here, so
think
they could probably definitely provide
majority
some
of the property, I
more
think, can
context to
access
that.
off South Lane,
Yeah, because I would hate to
if that makes
mean-
sense. Yeah.
restrict them from accessing their property or being able to develop it in the future. But, you know, if they've only got,
Yeah,
one
I
easement.
think the
It is.
both the applicant and the developer probably have more background on that.
Yeah.
So they can probably answer those questions better.
The river goes right through here, correct? That's the river.
Yeah, it kind of follows along
You know
here.
that as well as anybody.
I do.
Also, since we're right here, there is a stub road here to the property that
Oh, okay.
would be exchanged to the city for a future use. So there's access there, and there will be utilities stubbed there in case there's a parking lot for a trailhead or something like that. So there's electricity and other
Just-
utilities there.
Just curious, why do the trees stop here on this side?
So that was part of a redesign. They were showing them closer to Main Street, but there's a requirement, a distance requirement from driveways being too close to that
For
major
line of sight?
that major intersection.
Okay. So then they moved them up, closer up into the house.
Yeah,
have a
so
few
they
of
moved
up
them
closer.
farther away from Main Street to
Yep.
be able to meet that
Okay.
requirement. Okay, you go forward a few. This is the proposed preliminary plat. All these units are currently being proposed as for rent. So it would just be the street dedication for the public streets, and then the rest would be maintained by the HOA. So these are the findings and conditions for the rezone. Next slide for the preliminary plat. So I'd be happy to go into any details, or you can hear from the applicant at this point.
Yeah, I got a question. So for the parking, we said that 516 units were required. Looks like we have 742. I want to understand what those 742, what that actually means. So if I'm in one unit, what does my parking look like?
Go back a few slides. Right here. So it's 346 private stalls, 379 visitor stalls. So the visitor would be, there's 48 public stalls that are along the streets.
So the private
Close to where
stalls
the-
are garages.
So the private stalls would be the driveways,
Okay.
and then these 48 stalls along the street.
and that doesn't include the driveway, or the garage, just the driveway.
No, so the garage, so it'd be 2 for the garage, 2 for the driveway, and then the additional 48 spots there.
Okay.
What are the
So I
300?
guess our concern we've had in other meetings where we're like, wow, we're counting garage space, and they never get used for that.
Correct.
Then how do we control that? It gets to be a,
Yeah, that's, yeah. The 379 visitor stalls, what do those look like? Because you say you have 48 public visitor stalls.
Yeah, so you've got the 346 driveway, and then if you can go to the site plan. So you've got some parking stalls here by the guest house and pool. There's a detention pond here. There's some parking stalls there. So, and right here, so they're kind of spread throughout this central part.
Okay, so go back. Go back. So you have 48 of those that you were just pointing out.
Correct.
What are 379 visitor stalls? Is that
Those would be the driveways.
driveways?
Okay, so, and I'll just state this for understanding, this is probably redundant. So if I do the math on that, it's really two stalls per unit, but that, and you count both of those stalls as the driveway. So if I had a completely empty garage, I could put 2 cars in these garages. These are all 2-car garages, correct?
So yeah, so the requirement is 2.5 stalls per unit. So that's 430 stalls, and then 0.5 stalls per unit for visitor.
Okay.
So that's where you get the 516, and they're showing 742.
And our issue is that it's, oh, I interrupt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just thinking logically. So I could actually get 4 spots,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
If I could fit
If
2
you
cars
fit
in the
two
garage,
which
and then 2 in.
most of us can't, but yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so you've got the 4, basically 4 per
If I'm
unit
completely
plus the
packed in like
48.
sardines. Yeah.
And we've discussed,
Two compact-
we've
four
discussed,
compact cars.
in the past, Paul and Dave, we've discussed changing the standard to say 2, like, so that you aren't doing both your garage and your driveway, because that just really isn't very realistic about what's really happening.
Yeah.
So it just, yeah. Doesn't feel like there's really that many parking stalls, but that's what the city allows now.
Yeah, that's how they're presenting it,
Right.
so, but
Yeah,
because.
and that's what the
Yeah,
city.
and because this is a
expected.
master plan development and a rezone, that's where these discussions can occur, because it's a legislative decision.
Yeah. I just get concerns with parking. I get we need available units and things like that, and I see that. My concern with parking is, with how expensive housing is, we're starting to see a lot more people in houses. More generations live in those places as well. If you have a 16-year-old, a couple 16-year-old pluses who are still living at home, and given the price of real estate now, that can be a lot longer adventure. We're going to start seeing a lot more cars per unit. I think we're already seeing that right now. So that's just one thought I have here, and I just get concerned with that, because we use cars. Everyone does. Even though this is nice access to Main Street and everything like that. That's one concern I have there. And again, I know that's what our requirement is.
And I think that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It looks like we're getting away with, I think we're being clever here with how we apply these in this development here. There's going to be a lot of cars in here. There's going to be people even potentially trying to park outside of this unit, outside of this development, which is a walk, but that's one of my concerns.
That's something we
They'll
vigorously.
be parking along Main Street,
Yeah.
no doubt.
They may even attempt to park here where we have those those restrictions from UDOT.
Yep.
So
Which will be red curbed, right?
Potentially. May I, Mr. Chairman? I don't mean to interrupt, but I've appreciated the conversation, and just by way of the nomenclature, and I don't think the applicants are trying to pull a fast one over on anybody or anything like that, but it's distinct from how we typically would look at it, where we would not consider driveways that lead to garages as visitor parking.
Right.
So for us, the visitor parking would be parking that's available to anybody that comes to
Okay.
visit anyone. So that would be
The parking,
the parking that's
what typically we
adjacent.
call visitor parking would be the 48 public stalls.
Exactly, yes. And
Is
the
that-
remainder, which incidentally, having a 2-car garage and driveway space for 2 cars where the driveway is at least 20 feet deep, that's how it reads today, per unit, that does satisfy our base parking requirement without having additional parking. Now, I'm not saying that that is what you want to consider tonight, but that is how the code reads, is that when that situation exists to where potentially you can park 4 cars in your space, that satisfies the requirement. And I say that understanding tandem parking, space in the garage occupied, somebody occupying the driveway behind it. And a lot of times that's distasteful and doesn't happen regularly. Garages get used for storage, different things like that. So that's why typically, even when we have that arrangement, we are also talking about other parking elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because we have experience with just what ends up being needed.
I think the summary point is there's limited parking here.
Without a doubt, yeah.
So I guess the question, and this might just be about the HOA, but, because I've seen it where you're not allowed to park in a driveway overnight. Or more than a long term.
I don't think that's the intent here, and I think we would have a concern with that as the city, given that we're counting those driveways as required parking. I don't know what we would do about it if all of a sudden HOA started to sue people for parking in their driveways or something like that, but.
Yeah, because I've seen that happen. I know that's happened in other districts, places, cities.
But
so.
usually what I've seen in Spanish Fork is you have to be in your driveway and not parked on the road.
In the street. Right.
But another situation we'd see is visitor stalls often are excluded by the HOA for residents. And given the limited amount that we have here, I think that's a very likely potential that that's going to be kind of the first thing to happen. And I don't know, I've seen that in other communities. I'm not sure what's common here in Spanish Fork, but at least I know HOAs often do restrict that for visitor stalls.
But they are used. I know when I go visit my daughter in the Parkview, those visitor stalls are, it's the same trucks parked there every day.
Right. They're probably in violation of, yeah.
And that may be allowed there though too, I don't know.
Yeah.
My nephew just had his truck towed because he left it overnight in the visitor stall.
That's full circle with everything we're talking
There you
about
go.
here.
Yeah, parking's a bugger, sure.
Should we hear from the,
I have one more question for staff. Can you go back to the exceptions that the applicant was making?
Mhm.
That, you just went by it. You went zoom- that- Right, no,
It's before the pretty pictures.
There we go. So, part of my concern that I've discussed before, I think when we saw this, is item 2. They're proposing 8 plexes in excess of the 6 plexes that we allowed. That's one of my concerns is I don't like the look of that 8-plex unit, especially along Main Street. I think it makes it look like a 3-story wall of thin brick and hardy or stucco or whatever they're putting on the outside of that. And I don't like that exception. That is a concern I have. I would like it to be a much more view angles going through there to the back of the property. So I just wanted to bring that up to the commissioners as one of my concerns.
Yeah, and I think the exceptions are not a guarantee by any means. It's something that they're proposing and something that could be discussed and come into the decision made by the council ultimately.
Applicant? Want to hear from that? Thank you, appreciate I know we interrupted you multiple times, so you did good.
Mark Hampton, representing the applicants. Riley Jarrett is here with me as well. Do you want my address? Do I need my address?
Don't need your address, just
Your
name.
Sometimes, just name?
Great.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity. You guys have seen us before. This is a great opportunity for us to kind of explore the options. We, just to give you a little history, I don't know how many of you are familiar with how the city received the property that we're swapping, we're proposing to be traded for some development here. That was part of the Fritzy development that we did across the street. Been part of. We're happy with what's going on there. You've probably seen the construction of the apartments across the street that I still have ownership in. We donated to the city. It wasn't a dedication for densities. It was a donation. And so if we would have maybe joined with Chris earlier, we maybe would have not had to, we would have been a little bit different on our donation. But thanks for considering the trade, and it's correct. We're trying to trade developable ground above and beyond the floodplains that would be advantageous for the site plan. So that's the reason for the switch, the move, if you will. We've had extensive studies. I'm going to come back and talk about parking in a minute. Studies done by UDOT, parking studies by Ryan Hells, and others that have mandated the acceleration and deceleration lanes that across Main Street. There won't be any parking on Main Street, as per UDOT, whether it's red curbed or not. They won't be allowed. We have 2 accesses that are into our property, one on Chris's property, one on mine. And that's what allows us the 2 accesses, or we would probably not be able to access or even develop this. We have existing 2 accesses that we're granted with on title for our property, so we're grateful for that. let me just try and talk about a little bit, a couple of things. Yeah, I want to address the access to our neighbor. Presently, there's no easement access for Mr. McHale to get to his property on our side of the river, which we appreciate that he needs to have, and there was an agreement that I wasn't aware of with the city and him for the parks or the trails. So we on that site plan, we've created that access. I think somebody asked, is it wide enough for a road? It wasn't intended for a road, but it is wide enough to pull a trailer in there. You can see from the plan the right-of-way through there is 26 feet, and the curve that's back there, and the turnaround is for a fire truck turnaround. So there's plenty of room for Mr. McHale to bring whatever trailers he needs to into his property. And so we're appreciative of that, and we're sensitive to his access. Let's see, the other things that I made note of, we're really sensitive to the Main Street look. We've built these, what we call brownstones before. We actually own and operate and lease these in Lehigh. I don't know if you've seen them in your travels. It's right north of the Lehigh Rodeo Grounds. It's a very pleasing and architectural style that Riley can speak to maybe, that lends itself to the era of Main Street. We tried to make it look like extending Main Street down further to the south. Spanish Forks Main Street has that different brick and architecture style. Hopefully you can see and appreciate that. Parking. Let's talk about parking for a minute. This is HOA managed, right? So there will not be any HOA or members or owners or residents inside our community that will park that will be allowed to park and leave their trucks overnight in the visitor parking stalls. They have 2 stalls inside, 2 stalls outside, far exceeds anything we've seen. We manage about 5,500 units in Utah right now, and what we presented to you today far exceeds any parking that we have on any of our projects. This is, in our opinion, well overparked. According to Ryan Hells, and I think you have a copy of that study, it is also grossly overparked, in our opinion. I appreciate what you think it will happen, but when we manage our HOAs, they won't leave parking cars full-time and stuff in the driveways. And so hopefully you understand how we manage that when we manage our HOA communities. Because Utah now is the 8th most expensive housing in our nation, state in our nation, densities like this is the only way that we can get affordable housing for our children, for anybody who can afford housing. I don't know if I have a few of my children now trying to buy homes with the interest rate, and I have a son who moved to Texas because of the cost of housing here. And so we really appreciate the opportunity to make this a workable, walkable community. Now, the access in the front and the back, and to your point, if we can move that road, our intent is to leave the access away from that alley. We would hate pedestrians and children running their bikes up and down that alley. That's not what it's for. Making that wider and making it more walkable or friendly in the aisle, in that one, we call it whatever that long road is called. It was our intent to move the access and the public access to the outsides so the community can be on the outside. And that's how we did it in Lehigh. It works really, really well for us there. We could move that, like you've suggested, make those driveways a little longer. We just hate to have our public walking up and down when cars are moving in and out. The intent of that aisleway or roadway there is for access for the parking. And you'll notice if you saw the site plan, the landscape plans, the units, we've created access back to the front so you don't have to park. A visitor doesn't have to park and walk all the way around and come back to the front door. The access comes through those units. Between each unit has a walkway to the front of the units and activates those. Riley, what am I missing? Oh, trails. We really appreciate the opportunity to be where we are with the access to the city trails. You'll notice that we've done, and Riley can show some of this, we've done some things with our site to create some trails inside our community that will activate the trails along the river, and we appreciate that. We're showing accesses, I think, in 3 locations for our trails, and we'll have a bike repair shop that's fob open by residents that can go and fix their bikes, fix their tires, and hit the trails. That's one of our key components for the site. We also like the, and I'm not an architect, and Rodney can speak to this, but we like the massing study. So across the street, we're building 4-story walk-up apartments. The frontage, we're proposing a 3-story, and behind that a 2-story, and so it's kind of massing as it flows back into the trees and the river, making it look more of a flow community. That's what our intent was on having the 3 stories in front and the 2 stories in the back. Riley, do you want to add anything before I take questions?
No, they're all for sale, not for rent.
Oh, somebody mentioned that this is all a rent project. No, this is a for sale. We're trying to create opportunities, HOA managed, but for sale, for residents to live there, not for rent. We're not making rentals here. Rentals across the street that we own. What questions can I answer that I haven't probably addressed?
What percentage of your HOA, what percent of your homeowner managed will be required occupancy? So that's off, you own a place, but do you know what I mean?
You're saying if people buy a bunch of these and rent them out?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens. Generally what we've seen for HOAs do is they allow up to 50%.
We haven't talked about that, but we will limit it. Yes, I whatever percentage that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, the ones that I've seen are 50% or less are allowed to be rented.
Rentals.
Otherwise, it has to be owner occupied.
The ones that we manage in Lehigh are 100%. There's no rentals.
Like
Ownership.
they must be owner occupied 100%.
Right.
And you verify that.
Well, with the HOA, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how we verify and enforce
And-
it, but
And your HOA, it's not managed by the residents, it's
it is. It's member. It's going to be well until it's leased, sold, and it'll be rotated over to the owners association. Yes.
So the residents will be the managers, not an outside company.
That's right. Well, they'll hire the snow removal, all the landscaping. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Maintenance will be an outside company, but the HOA will be owners.
That's right.
That's a lot less.
HOA, yeah.
There's a lot less compliance when that's the case. When owners are the managers.
Well, I see just the opposite. So we also build senior communities, and they're HOA managed, and it's a nightmare to do anything outside the HOA documents. When it's owner occupied like this, then I think the owners of our communities mandate that it stays by the HOA covenants.
I live in a neighborhood with 3 HOAs and
3 different ones?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And some, yeah.
Some managed
It's not
better
always
than
the
others?
it's not always the case. Yeah.
I see. I'm sorry.
What size are these units going to be, the product?
That's a good question. So I think we're 1,300 on the smaller end, or no, the 2 stories are 1,500, and then the 3 stories are actually 1,600 square feet. So they're both 3-bedroom, 2-bath product, just configured differently.
What do you expect the price? Obviously, things change, but what are you kind of shooting for?
Question.
That is a good question. I wonder if I can answer that if I knew what the tariffs would do to us, right?
No, we don't know the future, right?
Our target is 450, below 500. That's our target market. We're all wondering what prices are going to do these days. Oh.
Hi,
Oh.
I'm Shaylin. Right now I'm the manager of the ones in Lehigh that we're trying to sell to the owner occupied. But we just did, this is for Lehigh, so it's a little bit different. But I think they were at 428 when we got an appraisal on those. So
That's our target. Wow. That was easy. You got harder questions, please.
See, I want to go back to the dirt bike track, but nobody agreed with me but me, I guess. Well, maybe Chris.
No, that's a good point. There's a little bit of horsepower there.
Yeah.
For him, it's 125. CC's not horsepower.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I guess does your son race 250? I'm sorry. Well, I'm back in 125 age. Yeah.
So you mentioned like you have 5,500 units and this look overparked. Can you kind of give me just a little more resolution on why you'd say this is kind of overparked or has?
So it's easy to say everybody is going to stock their garages chuck full and they're not going to use their garages, and that simply is not the case in our experience. There is storage that happens in the garages, and in the garages on these brownstone units, there is storage inside there as far as the ones that lift up. Most of our residents that we have these parking structures, parking garages in, they, I would say 10-15% have one of the stalls full. But with the, nobody's going to park. If we can't park on Main Street, we're not going to park along the river. So they need to park, and they can't park in the public parking, so they have to park in their stalls. So normally we don't see a parking requirement of 4 stalls per unit like this. Which what we're providing.
Basically, at the end of the day, you're going to have 1 in the garage and 2 in the driveway.
That's I mean, not to sound skeptical.
You live. I mean, do you?
Right. I live. Yeah, and I live by several of these, and so in a project that's right by me, they have a huge parking problem, and the visitor parking's a lot like this, and they are a little bit bigger units, but they have maybe 1 parked in their garage. I would say 75 to 80% will have 1 parked in the garage, and then 2 on the driveway, and then yeah, they can't park on their roads, and so they do have a big parking program. But when I go in and drive over there to go visit somebody there, it is really annoying to find a visitor parking spot, and I dare say they have more. David, I'd be interested if there was a way for somebody to look up how many visitor parking stalls are in Somerset Village versus how many visitor parking spaces are here.
It will shock you.
Or
you
how
won't
many?
believe it.
Really?
You will not believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that. I'll look.
Okay.
So, Jacques, in terms of
By way of how much there is.
How
I would
much?
not expect anybody to ever park on Canyon Road, given just the numbers.
So is Somerset more than this?
They do.
Yes.
Yet there is
And
persistent
tons of people
parking.
park on Canyon Road, and they don't have that option here.
Yeah.
But drive,
See if I can find
and I still think your driveways need to be 25 feet based on an F-150 being a little more than 20 feet, even if you're not having anybody walk along that alleyway road.
I can appreciate that.
You don't want a tailgate or something hanging
We
out
can move.
into-
We can move those driveways
Right,
deeper for the
yeah.
parking of big trucks. Just curious, Shaylin, how many of the residents in Lehigh are parking in the?
One has an extra car besides the 2.
Yeah,
and
we don't
they only
have. We don't have the
2.
same problem that
They
you're
don't have
saying.
a driveway. They just have 2.
Yeah.
They have 1 tenant that parks.
So we don't have we have 2 in Lehigh. It's 2.2
Yeah.
stalls per unit, and we don't have a parking problem.
Right.
So the other thing, I'm a little sensitive to this also because I have a large truck, but we designed all these units to fit a truck inside.
The garage.
In the
In the
garage?
garage. They're all 22 feet deep.
Right.
They all
So my 1 ton is 21 feet, and my garage is exactly like 21'6", so I can barely fit in
Right.
it. So I was trying to design around that.
Welcome to South
So you
Utah
know.
County.
Yeah. Speak to the
That's-
architecture.
That's good to bring up, though. I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that up.
Yeah,
That's
that
a
is
point.
really good.
Check to make sure I wasn't lying to you, so I pulled the plans and looked, and they, both the 3-story and the 2-story are that way.
Thank you.
We need to talk about how we engaged and how.
Yeah, I mean, we worked through this site. I mean, we're working on it for what, almost 2 years now. We've done countless concepts. We've tried to do a really good job of working with the way the site kind of flows with the floodplain that we have to deal with, the different architecture, like Mark said. We work from the 4 down to 3 to 2. We've done a really good job of kind of doing these front-loaded units and create a lot of landscape space in front of those. So then they're either along the main street, so you can have a lot of landscape plus the sidewalk, So you get a really nice kind of community interaction there. And then you get the same thing on the flip side where the front of those brownstones are then facing the clubhouse, the pickleball courts, and you can kind of see that in some of the renderings we did. And even more so, now that we're probably going to lose that little 3-story building when we move those roads. But yeah, we've been very sensitive to that, and we tried to design around that. We do like this brownstone product for places like Lehigh and Spanish Fork because we feel it kind of fits the community and the kind of the vibe of the main street. And we've done our best to kind of bring that to this project. So,
Can we talk about what's north here? And I don't know if you can speak to this or if it's staff. So we have the trail here. This area is what I guess this is land that the city would swap here. How far are we talking from here to the trail, and what are we kind of expecting that happens right here?
the trail connects still.
The trail's right here.
Yeah, it
And
kind of
then
goes up to a pinch point, to a triangle, so that's existing trail connection.
This right here is the Spanish Fork River Trail?
Right, yeah, it is.
That's the trail.
That's the existing one that we're connecting into 3 different locations,
Right there.
kind of the north, south, and mid. And then that Spanish Fork Trail also goes up to the north and connects to the Main Street Trail connection.
Will the city continue to retain this all the way up to the bridge, or to the bridge?
Yeah, that's why
the city's
we've
property,
left it.
though, I think you're looking at the wrong place. The city's property is right here, right?
That's right.
Yeah, this is
So
the
that's-
city's property that they're talking about swapping. It's not this up here.
It's not that up there.
It's this chunk right here.
Okay.
Yeah, but the city is maintaining that furthest north piece, because there was some discussion about needing an eventual interchange or some kind of connection of that intersection, so we've kind of kept that in mind.
All right, I have a couple questions for you. I'm wondering about stucco and siding on the townhomes. Never in the last 5 years that I've been on the commission have we ever approved stucco or siding. It's always been hardy board.
Right.
And so I'm wondering how that can be a proposed.
So I believe we've revised it since then. The brownstones specifically are like this. This is our project in Lehigh. The majority of the facade is brick, and then the side has hardy board on it, and then there's some stucco on the rear side of that. But even here, this is well above 50% brick that we see as a requirement in a lot of cities. If we want to pull up our elevations on this, I believe we've been cognizant of that as well on the 2 stories, and we've kind of looked at those in discussions with staff here. Oh, go one more right here.
Can I ask, Sean, where are you seeing that? I'm seeing thin brick.
So we've got
and
thin brick.
hardy or thin brick and stucco, not.
Yeah, we
not
only have a
hardy and
little bit of
together.
stucco. So even here you can see.
So here I'm seeing
siding.
stucco,
Yep.
and this is vertical siding. Is this siding a different?
So siding's kind of a misnomer. Siding just means a
Hardy
type of
board.
product. That is hardy board.
Okay.
It's a hardy
So
board.
it's not
Yeah.
vinyl
It's
siding?
no, yeah. and
Okay.
sorry, we could have made that more clear. All of this is a fiber cement product like a hardy board.
Okay.
Yeah, all
But
this-
I've still never been part of anything that's approved stucco.
I've never been a part of anything that hasn't.
Yeah,
We
see a
do
lot of
stucco, at least a small portion in
Do
every
we approve
building.
stucco?
Yeah,
I've just not noticed till now. All right, that's fine.
we far exceed the hard surface.
Yeah.
Our stucco's very minor.
Okay.
If you look at, again, well, you can't see it, but how our application.
Okay. Then which is our back elevation that will face the river trail? This is,
That would be
That would
the
be the
one,
brownstone.
well, yeah, so there's one brownstone that faces the river, and then this 2-story here that you can see. So the elevation right in the middle.
this one here will
Your
face
garage
the,
faces the street, and then that back is your back door to that trail. So it's actually a really, we think, a pleasant-looking elevation with plenty of stone and kind of a good articulation between the different facades, and it has good breaks. There's not long, continuous lines.
And then I actually don't agree with Commissioner Todd about the brownstones. I actually really like the look of the brownstones.
Thank you.
I don't know that, I don't have one opinion or another about 8 in a row, but I do.
Well, and you could look at this. We've tried to help with that. We're aware of that, and we don't want to kind of overdo it. So even with this, it looks like a 4-plex because of the way we've done the architecture, but this is 8 units. So you don't get as much of a kind of a repetitive 8 look with this kind of an architecture design.
Could we go to the
Could you go to
slide with the
brownstone ones, the 3-story, yeah.
And same here, we're trying to group them together to try to break that up so they don't have so much of a feel of 8. And we could even do even more on that end if we wanted
Right.
to reconfigure these a bit.
I don't love the look for this if it's gonna be facing the river trail. I like the look of this, but this is less.
That's in the alley.
Yeah, that's the alley face. It's the front side of the brownstones faces. So the
Oh.
bottom one faces the river.
That faces Main Street and the river.
So the river is going to have the best views of all the buildings, honestly, from
Okay.
what we've designed.
So would it be a big deal to eliminate the stucco on those facing the river, the trail, and or Main Street?
No.
Not at all.
In place of, what would you prefer to see there? Hardy?
Yeah, the hardy board, or the brick, or
Yeah.
yeah,
I
just
would-
not the stucco.
I mean, we do want to break it up a little bit because we don't want it to be too monolithic. So that's part of the reason to have a third material.
Yeah, and I understand that. I see that. And that also makes it look like it's not one
Yeah.
unit.
This,
They also step a little bit, and then you have those trellises. You walk down Main Street, and all those buildings look like they're straight, but they're not. And that's what we're trying to do, is create that Main Street look.
also, actually, this question is for Dave, but just about the land swap element. Is this, there was a developer that came for this same property, I think, and I'm not sure if it's you guys or not, that talked about installing a park in this area
Oh, yeah.
on the floodplain
Yeah.
area. Is this, that's
No,
not this
different group. Yeah.
Okay.
They had triple the density. That
Oh.
was before Chris bought it.
And they didn't get approved either.
No, they got denied.
Yeah, they could not get to the point that these folks are at where, if we said nothing else about their proposal, the city council could approve it. They meet our requirements in terms of density, they meet our requirements in terms of parking.
Who does, we or them?
You do.
We do.
The other group failed to get to that point, so.
Okay.
Makes sense.
We
The-
meet
Going
DC
to,
all codes.
going to an R4, they'd meet those requirements with the exceptions that were noted.
Except for the eightplex, yeah.
Correct. I think the other group was looking at the R4 zone as well,
Yeah, but they were,
but they were, yeah,
It
they
was
still were
beyond
way
that.
out of it.
Okay, now can we go to the general plat map? I'm wanting to look at parking. There's yeah, sure, yes. So you have a lot of units here with no visitor parking close by. Oh, where's the visitor parking? Oh, this isn't the map with the visitor parking on it. Could we see
it
that?
shows it,
There's none there.
Was it?
not clearly.
Oh,
There we go.
remember,
There we go.
We think the visitor parking is the driveway.
Correct. And that's, yeah, but that's not been our experience.
That's not your experience.
Right.
I don't think we usually don't define it as such,
Yeah.
internal to the city, but
So I just am not seeing, there's visitor parking right here. That's a long walk. I mean, it's a longer walk. Visitor parking here. So this is centrally located, but it is still a long walk for these guys for access. It'd be nice if there was some visitor parking right here or something. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, commissioners?
same thing for this side over here.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's the
they don't
same
have
thing.
visitor parking close by either.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it goes to what we decide as visitor parking is, because visitor, if we say that driveways are visitor parking, that's one thing.
What does the code say it is, the driveway? Code says it's visitor parking.
It just calls it parking.
It just can't be a
Just say it
private
satisfies
garage.
the requirement.
Yeah.
Satisfies the requirement.
Yeah,
It
this
doesn't
does satisfy
differentiate.
the requirement. It's just not what our conversations or experience has been.
I agree.
But let's say non-garage visitor parking would be what, like right there, and there?
Dave, did you find the number of stall?
Yeah, I shared it with you, a memo that
Okay,
we put together back in 2022
For sure.
of the Maple Mountain Townhomes, Parkview, Spanish Trails, Sunset Park, and Whispering Willows, and Somerset. Somerset has the most parking per home. Now, whether or not, so that might really alarm you, right?
Yes.
But 4.34 spaces per home, and a lot of those spaces go unused. And that is, I believe the majority of the homes there, I think there are some that just have single-car garages. Most of them have two-car garages and driveways that are at least 20 feet deep. So in the case of Somerset, with 204 homes, they have 75 off-street parking spaces. The parking there is fairly robust. And actually, like I've said, from what we've observed in the evenings and that type of a thing, a fair amount of the internal parking goes unused. Much of what, and you guys see it
The
more
internal
often,
parking, these go unused?
whether it's driveways or the parking spaces, there are typically spaces available within the development. At least from what I've observed, the
You have a few residents that have
Vehicles.
multiple cars, where some residents only have one or two.
or they have a big truck with a tool trailer
Right.
or things like that. That's a lot of what we see parked out. You know, you'd call
On
it maybe
Canyon.
spillover onto Canyon Road and that type of a thing.
And to give a little bit of leeway here, Somerset Village, those are large units.
Thank you. So we're talking, some of those are 5-bedroom, I believe.
Right.
3, 4, 5 bedroom.
And this is a different product,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, and I would say our ratio is the same. We're at 4.3, so we're already at the upper end of
Right.
all
But
those
Somerset
examples.
Village has more of these
Right.
available.
So is this like the community center
Yeah, that's the clubhouse and the pool, and then right in the middle are the pickleball courts.
right there
We can park those and not pickleball.
for these?
Got a parking lot.
You'd be in trouble then.
We would be in deep trouble.
Okay, because
It does look like
that's
there's some-
probably where your visitor parking is most valuable, right around.
Right,
Yeah.
that's why.
That's why we put it, yeah. Good call.
And you've got it there and there.
It does look like there is some room to extend it. I mean, some of those could get a little bit.
We could probably add some stalls in some of those areas.
And this property over here belongs to the city, right?
Right, we could possibly move that line and add some stalls there. Though that's backing onto a public street, Dave.
Can you point that out again?
Right here.
Yeah, I'm looking at that, and I'm looking on the other end of the development as well. There is some space where, you know, I think we're certainly far enough away from Main Street to where
Yeah.
you could, I think, fit some 90-degree parking spaces along there. Might
As-
be a lot, but,
As it is, would they have on-street parking here?
yeah, that's a good point as well.
Yeah.
We
On-street
would not
parking?
customarily red curb that, sign it, or that type of a thing.
I'm more comfortable if they have on-street parking there too.
That's just like going like on the road that goes to ALA from Volunteer Drive.
So are these roads, when this is all said and done, are these roads going to be maintained by the city or the HOA?
By the city, and that we,
Except
Been
this
working.
private drive?
The private drives are by us, all of the landscaping.
Including this private drive too would not be maintained. but-
exactly,
That's right, that's right,
it's those two different legs.
So probably the HOA would
that's right.
have somebody clear it.
When we have garbage pickup for this alleyway here, garbage would have to be back here, of course, right?
That's right. I think we showed a exhibit.
Yeah, we did. We made sure that the little island in between each driveway was sufficiently spaced so that we could fit the garbages there and still have access to the. We've gone through that kind of analysis.
We've gotten very particular about that. I don't think there are a lot of
Yeah.
cities that require developers to provide an exhibit that
We've
shows
never done
where
that
garbage
before,
cans
but
we
It was a
do.
fun one.
We showed garbage.
Welcome to Spanish Fork.
Yeah.
Trees, parking, and garbage cans now.
Hey,
Well, thank you. Any other questions we can?
Maybe we discussed this, but is this just kind of open access here, or is there a fence
That's-
along here?
that- Oh,
That's a detention
But between
pond
here and
that we
the-
talked
no, there's no,
There's no fences.
our proposal is to leave it open, so it looks like it flows into the river. That little area you pointed to, I'm mistaken, I didn't hear your question correct. That's a detention basin right there. That's why it's kind of open. We have to detain on
Right
site.
here?
Yeah, we have to detain our water before it goes into the river. Detain and clean. So that's what that's for, right there.
Is the blue, is this a wall all the way
That's a
around?
proper, no, it's open.
Property
The-
Open the whole way here.
We would propose it would be open.
So you're not proposing a fence behind these properties?
No,
No, not
To the
even
river.
on the units you can see we have we have side fences in between the units, but nothing behind, so they're
Yeah,
kind of just
you-
open.
Yeah, we're trying to make it open and walkable. And
Which I like, but I think that might be a hazard with young families and the river right there and no fencing stopping you from, to the river.
That's a good point. That is a good point. But I like the flow too, because it is such a beautiful
you can say
area
that.
there.
You can say that about anybody who's walking on that bike path. Then
Yeah.
they could drown in the river. I mean, we think this is really activating that whole trail. I mean, I think it's a beautiful amenity that the city has provided for their community.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Beautiful, unbelievable. And so we're just trying to activate that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we decided to clump this together as a public hearing for this topic. Mr. McKellar, do you want to come back up and address your items?
My name is Brent McKell, and I own this property on this side. I have a couple of points. On the 6th of July of 2010, I signed an easement and development agreement with Spanish Fork City. And I'm a little agitated in that this is the second Planning Commission meeting I've come to, and the developer has had no idea that I've had this agreement. I can tell you unequivocally that I would not have allowed the trail to come through my property because it cuts my access off to a significant piece of ground, a valuable piece of ground. I apologize in that I did not bring a copy of the contract tonight, but again, it surprises me that the city does not seem to be aware of that contract. As I remember the contract, it guarantees me easements to allow development on my property. I'd also like to point out, I don't know who owns this property over here. I suspect it may be mine. I'm quite sure this part is mine. It annoys me when developers assume that they're just going to run over me and put a trail through my property to the trail on the river. I agree that the trail is a wonderful asset to the city. And that was part of the reason that I allowed it to cross my property. But I had demanded that contract because I didn't want the city to damage me. And that is what's happening here. I think that's all I have to say. I will certainly have a copy of the contract before the next meeting, and I can certainly have my attorney contact the city attorney.
Could you give a copy to us?
Pardon?
I've looked for that contract at multiple times and I've not been able to find that. So if you find
I will, if you will give me a card, I will make sure you have a
absolutely,
copy.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Byron, do you have a copy of that?
I don't. Travis and I looked for it too, and we couldn't find one.
What's your access right now to your property on this side of the river? How do you access it now at this point?
Well, the only access I have is across the bridge, which isn't on my property. So I've been, right now I've been feeding livestock. I have fed livestock on this side, but I can't leave them for long because I don't have water. But it's a beautiful piece of property, and honestly, my original plan was to build a home right there. It's a beautiful bend in the river, and as I remember, it's up out of the 100-year floodplain. So, pardon me if I'm a little emotional, but it angers me that I've done this twice.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for me?
I don't think so. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Is anybody else here to speak on this? Please come up and, as we said before, just state your name and then whatever your comment is.
My name's Julianne Curtis, and I just wanted to make a few mentions about this particular piece of property. And as somebody who comes through Spanish Fork to Salem back and forth almost all the time, with the new condos that are across the street by the Quick Quack, it was kind of a real jolt and shocking to see those tall buildings coming in. And it just seemed to bring such a wall and a tunnel going through there to get into Spanish Fork. And so now that I see this coming in with the density, even though it's less density than the last project, it's still got density. It's still bringing in that condo feel that we're getting everywhere now. We're getting so many small developments, well, housings, that these kids don't have backyards. They don't have places to play. And we're just getting more of the same over and over again. And this is one of the most beautiful pieces of property in our river bottoms coming into Spanish Fork. And so for me, I'm just making the comment to say, I hope you don't approve it, because that's just so much more of the same on a very beautiful piece of property leading into the river bottoms. And I just think that it deserves something different, so that when people come into Spanish Fork, it feels different. It doesn't feel like they're just coming into a bunch more of the condo. This new concept that's coming in all the time on all of our beautiful fields and lands and properties. So that's just my comment on that. I agree with the man that just stood up. There's so much beautiful things going on there with the land that this, I think, does not lend to really help develop it to its potential the way it could be, to keep a beautiful entry into Spanish Fork. And I don't think just because you bring the Main Street Spanish Fork look clear down to the south end is any accolade to what's up on the north end. I think that it needs to be, we've got our fairgrounds right there with the horses. We've had that culture in Spanish Fork for the longest time. And I feel like we're just easing out of that historic culture. And I feel like putting all this living space right there does not help develop or maintain that historic part of Spanish Fork. So that's just my comments and what I have to say. I just think that property deserves something a lot more important for Spanish Fork.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Commissioners, any other thoughts? I'd like to, we talked about this quite a bit with staff and with the applicant. I think it's important from my perspective, Vaughn, that we answer Mr. McHale's contract with the city. That could be a hurdle if we need to find that or respond to it.
I can't really give any opinion on the contract. I haven't
That you've
read
not
it.
seen.
I've never seen it. I gave him my contact information. He said he'd get that to me, and then.
What is appropriate to do in a situation like that? To just keep that as a condition?
Yeah, maybe a condition that the city, honor its previous agreement with Mr. McHale, which we intend to do, obviously.
1 minute, please, because that easement could significantly change.
Alter the configuration?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't.
Or would we table it till we have that resolved?
That's an option too.
Okay. Sorry, you had something to...
I don't know. I apologize. If we go back to the map that showed the two, that one. So I don't know if I mentioned. So we talked about some kind of easement coming in here, but if you'll notice, this narrows down to a point here. So even access there would still cut off access to this property here. That'd still be landlocked.
Okay.
So I would need more than just an easement there. I would need some kind of easement on this side.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody from staff know, Mr. McHale brought up a question of assuming he believes he owns the property down that he just highlighted. Do we know the ownership of it? Do we have records of that? Who owns that property? Or is he correct, or?
I believe so, just based on what we can see from the county records, yes.
Okay.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, just
Sure.
mention that the only reason that the driveway has been configured as it is here with the proposal to provide a connection to Mr. McKell's property is the understanding that the city has some obligation at this point in time to work with the developer that's developing the site to make that happen. So certainly there has been an effort to respect that. I appreciate that Mr. McKell is going to make sure that we are going forward, but I don't think the issue's been ignored. But we'll make sure that it hasn't been.
Sure. So because, even though we don't have the contract, because of past concerns that have been brought up, the city is trying to make a consideration for that easement, which may not bring up the article. When we're done in a minute. What, is it on this topic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very clear from staff that we had to create an easement for Mr. McHale, and that's why that is there. And so I didn't know, wasn't aware of the agreement, but that was clear that access easement should be in our site plan.
Sure.
And we can accommodate. I wasn't aware that the trails that we have designed, I thought Mr. McHale's property was further southeast. And so we can realign those trails so they don't cross Mr. McHale's property and come down and hit the trail on the city property, to not go across Mr. McHale's property. But just so you're aware, we were instructed as a developer to create an easement.
You're trying to comply with
Yes.
with the information you had.
It's not like we weren't aware that there needed to be an access. We were aware.
So would it, and I don't know, but would it be, you've got this access here, this easement, would it be a big deal to make this
It wouldn't be a big
an
deal
access?
at all.
Because I know
No.
further down on,
But I will clarify, we've had, I don't know if I want to say extensive, we've had multiple floodplain studies. Mr. McHale's property is clearly in the floodplain.
Okay.
And then Julianne's concerns about the look and feel of it. We hear that a lot. We feel that. Most of us are born and raised here. We understand very well that it's we're also faced with property owners' rights to get the highest and best use of their land and growth that happens. But there's always a part of us that's like, wow, that's not the way it was.
And we've been discerning, like we said, there was another proposal with a much higher density, with much more imposing buildings, and so we've continued to work with property owners for what our expectations can be for that area. I'm sorry if I'm ignorant about this and with what you said, Mr. McHale. So you gave the how does that work with
when he gave the
trail?
rights for the trail to be built, part of the consideration is he needed to maintain easements so he had access to his land.
Okay,
For the
so
trail
you
to be put
gave
into his property.
so you gave the city
When I gave the city the easement
Mission.
across my property
to use the trail.
to install the trail,
Okay,
they guaranteed me easements into my property when the adjacent property was developed.
I see. That makes sense. And I ride that almost every day on my bike, and it is a very beautiful part of. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart for dedicating that for the city. That means a lot to me. It also means a lot to me that that we honor, make sure that you have your property rights as well. A lot. It matters a lot to me. And so what I'm wondering, so you say that, what are your uses right now on this property? Remind me what your uses are. What do you use this property for
Right now,
now?
all I'm doing is grazing livestock.
Okay, and is there a fence along, I can't remember if
There,
I've seen.
there is
Yeah.
There
a
is- because
dilapidated
it's-
fence
There's a lot of,
that went
lands-
along the back of the
Yeah.
horse property.
okay, because there's a lot of trees there too.
There's a lot of trees and.
Yeah. Okay, so
It's-
I just am not as aware.
Yeah,
Okay.
there,
But this is-
there is a little bit of grazing in here. But there are a lot of old cottonwood trees.
Right, and in your very best world, you'd love to build a beautiful home right there.
I would have loved to have had a home on that.
But this here feels like it's not a wonderful place for you to put a home now.
I don't feel like I can stop progress, if you want to call it that. But and I realize that the city needs housing that's affordable. I understand all that. But it is a little hard being a landowner in the middle, and I'm sure you're aware that the develop goes all around me. It's on my east, it's on the east side, it's coming on the north side. Now it's
Because
on the
because you own the fields that are over on this side.
I own the property
Over
straight
here.
east.
Oh, gotcha.
And there's definitely something, the city, we have to be responsible and take care of the landowner because, I mean, he donated that trail, and if we don't take care of him at this point, the next landowner's not going to want to work with the city on it. You know, the next time the city goes to somebody and say, hey, you know, can we work with you and put a trail through? If they know that the city's going to take advantage of them, they're not going to deal with the city. So.
Well, it was obvious from the start that to go back in history, there was a developer, Fritzy Real Estate, who owned the property. I don't know if they still own it or what their association with this is. But I had a meeting with the owner of Fritzy Real Estate, and he was, I don't know if it's working anymore, but between the two trails, he basically came to me and said if I didn't give him the property, he landlocked me. And so I thought, well, I knew the city wanted the trail, and so when the city came for the trail, I said, the only way you're going to get the trail is if you give me some easements. That's how that all happened.
Yeah. And however it happened, I mean, it's something the city needs to honor and deal with because, you know, there's going to be a lot of that in the future, I think.
I think that from the developer side, from the city side, and from Mr. McKell's side, they just, let's get to the bottom of that. I mean, even the developers working within the information they had.
Right.
While I don't think, can be entirely certain about what it takes for the city to satisfy whatever obligations we have, we're gonna.
Right. We're certainly going to try. We will do our best to find out what those obligations are and honor them.
So would it be best to table this issue and come revisit it after we see the contract? And
You can certainly make a motion for that.
I don't believe that providing access to all parts of what the McKell family owns, it's on, I'm gonna call it the west side of the river and the west side of the trail, would really result in any kind of significant redesign of what we're seeing tonight. I think if I thought that it did, I definitely would say continue it, but in any event, that's for you to decide.
Because
Like we talked about earlier, it could be a condition, you could table it, you could, I mean.
Vaughn, we think we found that agreement, so we're gonna email it to you.
Yes, that's fair.
But just glancing at it, it just kind of talks about access, really.
yeah.
So we could approve conditional, because I don't think a guy that's had to come through this, if we table it, they're another month before they see us, and then they're gonna have to wait for city council. If we say we're okay as long as that's fixed, by the time the city council looks at it, we should know if it's fixed, correct? So they're not gonna wait one full month to come back to us.
Or at that point, the council could say.
Yeah, the council
You've
could say,
not reviewed it, you've
yes.
not taken care of this condition.
100%.
They're gonna continue.
Yeah, which, my vote would be to make the motion and let it roll, get it fixed, and the city council make sure.
Well, the council cares about all the same
100%.
things.
They'll make sure it's right.
Yeah.
I'll make a comment there. I think as we've talked through this and a lot of considerations for this development, I think there's a lot of questions. We've had those questions answered. I think we've highlighted the concerns that Mr. McKell has. We have an easement here in place, and it sounds like we're doing due diligence here. If there's any comment I'd want to make on this is just if we added some sort of comment to address any sort of easement concerns here, and include just some language that says we address that. So I wouldn't necessarily want to table this, but I would want to make sure that we somehow wrote that we addressed any outstanding easement concerns specifically for Mr. McCall.
Okay, so along those lines, I also.
And the public, we would agree, we would want to honor any agreement that is with McAllen, so we will resolve that before city council. If we have to make another easement, we'll work with that.
Yeah. So if we perhaps put that in a motion, I think that
I like that
solves
idea.
here, and then we're not delaying process for something that I think we like what we're seeing here. At least I like what I'm seeing here.
I don't. My concerns still are along that frontage. I don't like the look of that. I don't like going from the 6-plex look to the 8-plex look. That is a concern of mine. I would like to see more of the public, or what we'd call visitor parking. Not a lot more, some more. So those are my concerns I've been consistent with from the first time we saw this. And that'll be.
That is a good point about the
That's my
parking.
point. I don't, I just want to speak my mind on that. I've addressed that with you all in previous meetings. Well, those of you that were here.
Do you feel comfortable if
I don't need to feel comfortable. I'm just giving you my opinion on the matter. You guys can have your own opinions on it.
But I mean, if we said 6s instead of 8s on that?
I think that is the intent of that zoning, and
That's the zoning.
for the reasons that I believe, because I was involved then, the reason we did that is because we didn't want to have a continuous look of like we have here now. I agree with the comment that we heard from the public. As you come in, you're going to have a 4-story development to the west, and then this to the east. It creates it's not a canyon, but it creates a channel. They're coming through 3-story and 4-story buildings that I personally think should be more broken up. So.
If it's more broken up, then perhaps we have more parking too.
You probably have less density. It'd be less
Yeah.
density for the developer, which is a negative for them. Again,
I have the concerns about parking. I understand where we talk about we're overparked there, but I don't know if there's something different in Spanish Fork, or it's just different with the way we're consuming houses now. I see it everywhere, and it is hard, and we all use cars, and it makes logistics of living difficult, especially when we have children. So I'll echo at least that concern.
I do want to commend the applicant that at least they didn't show us the same table that 3 or 4 other applicants have shown us. How Smash Fork has the highest parking in the county. That's actually a good step. You didn't throw that in front of us.
Can I talk one more time? Sorry. We've done the studies on it. I appreciate your comment on the 6s versus the 8s. It's an opinion. We like the continuity of it. We lose 3 units. Mm-hmm. If we go to 6, if you approve it, recommending a 6, we lose 3 units. It's not a big deal for us. It doesn't change the feel. It just creates 2 or 3 more little alleyways, and that would be those 3 units. And so it doesn't allow us more parking. It just creates a little more alleyways along that. So we're okay if you make that recommendation. It doesn't reduce dramatically our density.
Okay, great. Thank you for that comment.
I think that if we're talking about parking, I am comfortable asking for 6s instead of 8s, and then I personally think it would be good to have, rows of like this, of visitor parking right here, like right here and right here. So then you have a 6, you have 2 6s right here with a parking in between, 6s right here with visitor parking in between, and then there's more access. There's more access for the front row as well. What do you guys think about that?
I think I've stated what I think about it.
I prefer the 6s, and that goes with the current zoning, so.
If anybody wants to, I guess there'd be two motions. We need one first for the zoning change, and then we'd need one for the preliminary plat approval also. Those would be, the one we're recommending, the other one would be approving, correct? Or so yeah, so just be aware of the wording of that.
I think rather you're recommending.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think we
Okay.
got back and forth. I think we did. We added language to make it clear that
Okay.
the council's the land use authority for master plan.
Yeah, I'll do the easy one first. I move that we recommend the Creekside Village zone change for approval to the city council.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion on the preliminary plat?
Do we want to come together on what conditions we think should be added?
I think so.
Yeah. So we go with the 6 and deal with the easement.
Mr. McKill's contract. being
Easement
approved
and
reviewed,
add, do we want to
and staff's findings and
add
conditions.
two more?
Yes.
Add 2 more visitor parking.
From what I'm taking from our conversations, I would say that would want, oh, you saying add more parking?
Add 2 more visitor parking areas in that row.
That was one of my concerns. I'm fine with that. I'd love to see more. I don't know are you going to define that or leave that up to the applicant to find that?
I would say more, instead of trying to tell them they gotta have 2 new spots. That's
Okay.
gonna be hard enough to get more,
Okay,
I
well, they
think.
know where we think.
I'm gonna go to six units instead of 8, and adjust the parking.
6 units instead of 8, adjust parking, and address any easement concerns from Mr. McKell.
That sounded good. Are you going to
Yeah,
propose
that
that?
sounded good. You can word that out right.
Do you mind,
I'll
do you
make-
mind if I clarify that a little bit?
Please.
I want it to be so that we honor our agreement with Mr. McKell. There may be a difference between that and easement concerns, as you put it.
Good point.
So if I move that we honor any agreement made with Mr. McKell, that we go from 8 unit to 6, and then address any addition, or add additional parking.
And I think it'd be that the city or the applicant honors the conditions, because the applicant has said they will honor it. So, yeah. I think you got it.
I'll move for.
Then make a motion.
I'll make a motion as just stated, or should I restate the motion?
Restate it,
again?
please.
We recommend it to the city council.
Include the staff's
Okay.
other finding conditions also.
So I make a motion that we recommend approval of the preliminary plat. Let me make sure I get that right. And that we, with additional conditions, that we switch from 8-plex to 6-plex, that we suggest the additional parking, and that we honor, and that the city honor any or any agreements made for access,
For the applicant.
that the applicant agree for any agreements made for access for Mr. McKell, and that is reviewed by the city.
Does that work for you, Vaughn? That's good. Sounds good. Good job.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks for working with us, South Utah County kids.
Parking and trees, well, no, garbage cans too, don't forget that.
The next item of business is the Meadow Creek Ridge reapproval from 2025.
Okay. So, this is located up at 1470 East and Spanish Fork Parkway, and it contains 7.73 acres. The property is currently zoned R16 and has a general plan designation of medium density residential. The applicant has proposed a standard subdivision containing 39 single-family residential lots to be developed in 2 phases. Just as a reminder, this is a standard subdivision and the zoning's already in place. So this is technically an administrative action tonight. It's not a legislative action. And you guys are the approving body of this one. Okay, so this was previously approved. This was a previously approved subdivision back in April of 2023, but the approvals just recently expired last month. So this is a reapproval of that. The surrounding zoning to this subdivision is R16 throughout the rest of Meadow Creek Ridge, and then C2, general commercial, across Spanish Fork Parkway to the south, and R3 to the far east across the other phases of Meadow Creek Ridge and SR51. So you can't actually see it on this further to the east. The density of this subdivision is 5.04 units per acre, which does comply with the maximum density of the R16 zone, which is set at 5.34 units per acre. Many of the lot sizes, if you go back to the plat, many of the lot sizes, I guess this is the utility plan, but many of the lot sizes within this are right around the 6,000 square foot mark. Some of them are a little bit larger. But the subdivision as a whole does comply with the minimum development standards such as setback, size, depth, and width. As a note also, a majority of these lots are restricted from having basements, and the ones that are not restricted will require a geotech report prior to the development of them. Those are noted on the plat as well. With this proposal, if you go to the landscaping plan, with this proposal, landscaping, a masonry wall, trail, and curb will be constructed along the frontage of Spanish Fork Parkway. And then, sorry, this is like back and forth. If you go back one, but that one's perfect. In the bottom left corner there, you can see that there's a future lot. So that is a remainder parcel. It's not going to be developed at the moment because due to the presence of wetlands. So prior to becoming buildable, it'll be subject to further approvals. But with that being said, public improvements are still going to be installed and utilities will be stubbed to this lot. So if they can sort out the wetlands, they can get approvals in the future. So some of the key issues to consider: easements, wetlands, grading, utilities, and improvements. And like I said, this is an administrative action. You guys are the approving body. The DRC recommended the reapproval of this proposed Meadow Creek Ridge preliminary plat. Any questions?
How do you mitigate wetlands? Seems like you're confident. I mean, if you're going to put utilities in, that means or the stubs in, you're confident that. I mean, go back to this is I'm not the professional, so.
That'll be a good engineering question. How do you mitigate wetlands? Because I don't know either.
Yeah, there's a process through mitigation through the Army Corps. So my understanding, they've submitted that, and the applicant, he's expecting something back pretty soon on that mitigation. So.
I'm so sorry, I couldn't.
The Army Corps, they review that and they would approve that. So it's in process with them, and the applicant feels like it's going to get approved anytime soon. So.
I think in the past we've seen a lot of developments like this. Usually when they're trying to hit the minimum square footage, there's usually some anomaly lots that bump that number up a lot. These are pretty uniform. It looks pretty straightforward what we've done over there before.
Mm-hmm. And you said it was approved before?
Yeah, this was approved originally back in April of 2023, and preliminary plats have a 2-year expiration on them, so it just expired. So they're reapproved, or they resubmitted for approval.
Do we want to hear from the applicant? Is the applicant here? Do you have anything else you want to add? Or are you good with Ian's representation of your development? Great. You'll state your name, please, and company.
Lynn Renlisbacher.
Okay.
If it's 0.10 of an acre or less, then the wetlands can be bulldozed with no approval from the Army Corps. Our piece is 0.12 in the little triangle or the weird shaped parcel there, where you can see the line hatches. That's what the wetland is, but it's an island. So all the way around it is uplands, and it's low quality wetlands. And it's, yes, we had the wetland guy out there again about 8 or 10 days ago, and we're in the process. We still think it'll happen, so not for sure, but it's so close to the 0.10 that it's more of a nuisance thing, but we're trying to do it the right way. So
great.
The wetlands on this whole project has gone on for at least 10 years, probably 12 years. So this is the last little piece. So.
Okay. And I guess it's at the applicant's risk stubbing that in if they don't get it. It's at their risk.
Yeah, it's no.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions?
No.
Nope. This was very straightforward.
So when he says bulldoze, does he mean he brings in dirt to go over the wetland so
Yeah.
you can build on it?
Clear it.
Is that
Then
right?
Clear it.
Build a pad.
Yeah, maybe. Clear it and fill it.
Okay.
Okay, I would entertain a motion if anybody feels like.
I will make the motion that we reapprove the Meadow Creek Ridge lots. Findings and conditions. Do I need that? Because we're the body, right? So
Based on the finding and.
based on the findings and conditions.
Perfect.
Be a second.
The motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Motion passes. I'm sorry. Next item is the Spanish Springs Phase 3 amended preliminary plat.
And just like the last one, this one's also an administrative decision. You guys have the approval body for this one as well. So this one's located at 2700 North and 170 East, and it contains 23.34 acres. The property is currently zoned I-1 light industrial with a general plan designations of business park and commercial. The applicant has proposed an amended preliminary plat for 3 additional industrial lots. So the whole master plan preliminary plat was approved originally back in 2020. They're associated with this. If you go to the next slide, there is going to be a remainder parcel A, associated with this phase that is on the corner of Main Street and 2700 North.
Where is that on there? Is that the?
It's the big red box.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So that part is going to be a remainder parcel for now. That'll be subject to future approvals. It's noted on the plans that this is currently not buildable and will need a separate subdivision plat and site plan prior to developing. This proposed subdivision includes improvement work being done with the UDOT 2700 North interchange project. Previous agreement details and the timing of Main Street improvements are included in that agreement. And if you guys have any questions about any improvements like that, I would once again also direct you guys probably towards engineering. Yes, some of the issues to consider here are power relocation, utilities, public improvements, storm drain, and access. And the DRC once again recommended approval of the Spanish Springs Phase 3 preliminary plat amendment based on findings and subject conditions listed in the staff report.
Can we see just a map of this area?
Yeah, if you go back one.
Get a better feel.
Or yeah, if you go to.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I think in the middle of that, also not to offload anything. This was Brandon's thing, so I'm kind of trying to learn it as we go. But I think that's Dry Creek in the middle of that right there. Which is not buildable at the moment, I believe.
That's part of the non-buildable area, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So can we go to instead of this
Yeah.
view, can we go to the map, the city map? Or is this, yeah, right there, thank you.
So this right here is 2700 North, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
The improvements we expect to go all the way to Main Street per
Yes.
UDOT.
Main Street, yeah. With the UDOT project, the new interchange project will fully improve 2700 North all the way to Main Street. And install a signal right there at Main Street in the airport entrance.
And this
Where
is
is
where,
that at? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Right here.
Right there,
Okay.
yeah.
Right, it's the intersection of 2700 and Main.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
oh, right there.
Yes.
That's the armory, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're looking at right here,
No, right there, yep.
right here.
And kind of,
Both,
and
yeah,
right there
both,
with that.
This area
yeah.
right here.
It's
And
a
this
weird
is not
shape.
buildable.
In the bottom left, actually.
Oh, just that.
And this is owned by a different group.
Okay.
And up along Main Street.
This is owned by UDOT. So I think Ian said it, but 3 buildings. So at the
Oh, yeah,
applicant
3 buildings.
anticipates building 2 here, kind of oriented like that. Third one here. We have site plan applications for at least one of those.
Yeah.
Final plan application as well. So
Mm-hmm.
they're starting to get anxious to go.
Consistent with the other buildings that Camina has built out there?
Yep.
Concrete tilt-up buildings, what they're planning.
Very quick construction.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
It's boring.
I've got to say it, the 500,000 square foot building that's just west of the airport, 500,000 square feet, one day, no walls. Like 36 hours later, walls. It's like,
You blink and you miss it.
it's amazing.
And just to clarify, this is the remainder parcel here.
Which probably will be developed by the same folks, but they're thinking like a convenience store or something like that. Maybe a little strip retail space. Close proximity to the interchange, right at the doorstep of, or front door, I'd say, of the airport on Main Street. See a lot of things working well there.
A lot of warehouse space, a lot of traffic going in and out of that, for sure.
Yep.
This is traffic we haven't
And
seen
you called that
before.
Dry Creek?
I think it's called Dry Creek. I'm pretty
It
sure.
is.
Am I crazy?
I grew up calling it something totally different.
Yeah, we call it Dry Creek.
I can
But
make
we
you
won't
guess.
go there.
Okay, so this was one plat and now they're dividing it into 3? One plat was, or one,
It was originally approved, I think, in essentially different phases. So this is the platting of phase 3.
Phase 3 used to be 2 lots, right? And now it's 3.
So I think that's the difference.
oh,
That's
2
the
to 3.
difference, yeah.
They added, the one that was added was to the east.
Yeah, that was split into 2
Oh,
lots.
gotcha.
now. Yeah.
Oh, a line put down that middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Gotcha.
now instead of, and I think before they had a building kind of oriented like that, I can't remember, that was what they were thinking would work. And now they're proposing to do, and I think there's something in the
2
staff
buildings?
report to that effect, 2 buildings that are kind of east-west oriented.
Right there.
Oh, yeah. The new one is page 3.
Oh, no.
Sounds right.
Got it back.
Yeah, exactly.
Any
Page
other
3.
comments for staff? Is the applicant here? Would you like to address anything, or are you good with Ian's?
I'd love to. I waited all this time.
You did. You did wait a long bunch of time.
It's been
Waited for hours.
3 hours.
I was so bad for the person at the end of it when we have a long-winded
It's okay.
time. So appreciate your patience.
So Nate Reiner with CIR Engineering. I'm the civil engineer, kind of designing all of this. So back in 2019, we had preliminary plat approval for the entire Spanish Spring subdivision. Since then, we built the 3 lots to the north. They've decided to come back. I think it's from marketing reasons, that a little smaller footprint of a warehouse makes sense right now. So we're actually going through and splitting the west side of 170 East into 2 smaller lots for 2 smaller buildings. That will allow for 3 industrial buildings right now on lots 5, 6, and 7. The triangle piece in the southwest corner will end up being commercial at some point in the future. We're a little unsure on what that final layout's going to be, whether it's 1 building, 2 buildings. So they're kind of staying put on that right now. In addition, with the remainder improvements needed along 2700 North and Main Street, anything outside of what UDOT's currently building. So whenever we come through with an actual plan for that corner, we'll end up amending this preliminary plat with a more detailed idea for that corner. So we'll end up doing this process again. But as of right now, that corner won't be built on. It'll just be the 3 industrial lots.
Great. Any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One question for staff. Along 2700, since this one, the small, where's the pointer again? So, no, back the other one, please. So this will be fronting, I mean, this will come down here to 2700, right?
No, it actually accesses 170.
So the access is here. Okay.
I think that shows good.
So we wouldn't require any additional fencing, like the masonry fence or anything like that along there? It would just be,
No, I think we'd want it open.
yeah.
It'll be the,
And back in here, it's all similar uses, so it'd be nothing back in there. Right, yeah, okay.
the intent would be that it kind of has, as I would describe it, like a business park kind of a feel and that sort
Yeah,
of a thing,
okay.
so.
Yeah. So what's gonna happen with the waterway there? Is it just gonna be landscaped and is there a trail along it or is it
Just landscaped here. We have a trail that parallels it further to the north.
Right.
But I think here the idea is that pedestrians would use 2700 North.
Stay along the road.
And then Main Street, yeah.
Probably landscape similar to what is further south on Main Street where the other waterway runs in front of the rental units and that.
Yeah.
Front of where, sorry?
Like where the transfer station is, where you turn there, there's a.
Oh, yeah,
In
yeah.
front of the armory,
Yeah.
there's.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's actually north, not south.
Yeah, I was gonna-
Yeah, it's
yeah,
north.
north.
Sorry. It's been a long day. Okay, don't have any questions? Motion?
straightforward?
I move that we approve the Spanish Springs Phase 3 preliminary plat amendment based on the findings and subject to the conditions.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
The motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. The next item is to adjourn the meeting, adjourn the work session.
So moved.
Don't look for Dave, do we have a motion?
You want to adjourn or adjourn to work session?
Oh, adjourn to work session, yeah.
Well, we had thought that there might be value in that. I would say at this point, we're probably better off just to load up the joint meeting next week and call it a night, if you're comfortable with that.
I second
Do we
that.
want to, so, one idea though, our meeting to go on that tour, did we want to do a work session before or after that?
Tomorrow?
Or are we dividing into 2 groups, so we won't all be together anyway?
Tomorrow night?
Do you have something in mind for the work session that you want to cover?
No,
Okay.
no.
Then
I just want to make sure we don't short you on something that you want to present to us.
Look at you, always looking out for Dave.
Get choked up over here. I have never heard that.
Not from me.
Anybody, especially not at 9 o'clock.
He hasn't slept for 2 days, so.
Man, no, I do want to reiterate, and I assume you guys talked a little bit about the joint meeting next week. We're looking forward to that. Vaughn's going to do some training. Talk about the Vaughn's part will be great. The ethics part, just grit your teeth and and get through it.
Thank you, Vaughn.
Yeah, based on that, particularly, I'd say let's call it a night.
Okay.
Can I get a quick head count though on anybody that's planning on meeting our Public Works folks tomorrow at the wastewater treatment plant?
I'll be here tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
50-50.
Okay.
I can't
handful.
next week, so I'm gonna try tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
I'm still undecided.
Okay.
We're talking about an hour, is that right? Or I'm just-
No more.
No more,
I've
okay.
committed on our behalf to.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Tomorrow you'll get our absolute expert when it comes to wastewater and the city system and the new plant.
I'm
so,
excited.
Yeah.
I wanna see it.
It's cool. I've seen it. But that's it. Appreciate that. If you have any trouble finding where you're supposed to go tomorrow, just give me a call.
So the motion is to, the topic is to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting stands adjourned.